My name is Ellen Kagen, and I'll be serving as a moderator and convener of this amazing stellar panel we have for you today. Because we're going to be talking about how the leaders who are going to be presenting to you today actually self-reflected on their role in leading change and decided to do something different. They decided to change the way their normal way was. And each of them has a story to tell about how by changing themselves, they were able to change others. So I want to share with you that as I reflect on my life as a person desiring change and a person who has been attempting in my own way to provide some leadership in the system of care world, it's been for me about 30 years. I am one of the founders of the system of care movement. I facilitated the very first conversation in Kennebunkport, Maine, in 1986, when the values and the principles of this new system design was emerging. And at the time, I was a very young professional. I had very little authority per se, but I understood the momentous moment that was happening in that room. A group of people who decided to put out there that we could do things differently. And our children didn't have to fall through the cracks. Our systems didn't have to be so fractured. And families didn't have to be sidelined and blamed for the situations for our children. It was a very powerful moment. I think because I was so young, it made an indelible mark on me. I went on to be the founding staff of the National Technical Assistance Center on Children's Mental Health at Georgetown University. And so I have had a chance to work with so many of you in this room in designing opportunities to learn from each other, to test ideas, to change attitudes. And since then, a lot has changed. And I think the Federation of Families Conference is witness to that, because as Jane Walker shared yesterday in the session we presented in, the very first Federation conference was about 50 people. And now we have so many more. Leaders in this room, like Jerry from Oklahoma and Anita from Georgia, have been at this, for many years, and a lot has changed. But a lot hasn't changed. A lot of things have remained the same. We all want the same thing. We, and I say we, families, system partners, organizational leaders, providers. We want relationships. We want trust. We want creativity. We want innovation. We want partnership, and we want support. But when that's not happening, the big question is, why is that happening when we all want the same thing? It's been so hard. There has been so much pain, having both participated in my own and witnessed it in others, and not just between systems and families, between systems and systems, between family organizations and family organizations. You know what I'm talking about. It's everywhere. And it's been hard to watch. So 7 years ago, I went back to school, and I went to get my executive leadership coaching certification. And in that process, I learned a new way of communicating. I learned an approach, which we now call the coach approach, as a way to change the conversation between people so that we could achieve the outcomes that we seek. I thought I went in the program wanting to be a coach, but I learned something completely different. I learned that the thing that was missing in our systems of care is how we engage with each other and how we communicate with each other. That we needed to learn and be better at creating spaces where people feel safe, seen, and heard. We needed to see each other as capable and competent of solving our own problems. We needed to manage our passions so that we could listen to understand and not just listen to respond. And I learned that if we do this, we will all feel more connected to each other. So 6 years ago, I dragged my coaching teacher, Beth Greenland, to Stark County, Ohio. Anybody in this room from Stark County, Ohio? Anybody? Because this was the first testing ground. I dragged her into this thing called systems of care. She had no idea what this was. She knew it was good. It was around, supporting children with mental health challenges and their families. And we presented for the first time the coach approach to adaptive leadership. And the response was amazing. Stark County said to us, we need to do this. We need to do more of this. But Beth and I were just two individuals. We had no idea what we were, what this was really going to become. And so 2 years ago, I left Georgetown University and with Beth and others founded the Coach Approach Partners, because the vision is this has to go nationwide. We all have to learn how to use a coach approach, whether it's system to system or family to family, family to young adult, family organization to family organization, cross systems, you name it. We're going to be it. And I had no idea what the response would be. What you're going to hear today is the beginnings of a movement about how to change the conversation. You're going to hear from the speakers how they took this opportunity to listen better, to ask more questions, to actually give supportive feedback so people could feel valued and connected, and how it literally changed the way in which we do business. It's another way of being so that the system of care values will be in evidence every day. That's why I'm so excited. That's why I'm here. And that's why I want to thank all of you in advance for being part of this great opportunity to take on a new or enhance a new way of being from the way we already are. So 2 things are going to be happening today. You're going to hear real stories. We're going to get to share our own stories in this room about how this approach can be used and maximized. And you're also going to see bits of the curriculum of what it looks like to learn this coach approach, to go deeper. And so the learning objectives of this is to really feel like you've got a handle on what this thing called the coach approach is. You're going to see much of it are things that you already know how to do. We're going to actually put it into a framework for advancing systems change. And we're going to understand how your organization can be trained and can implement the coach approach in your community through the stories that you're going to hear. First, from Janice Schutz, who is the executive director of the Washington State Community Connectors, a statewide family organization, and an emerging powerhouse in the state of Washington to change the conversation and to change the system. You're then going to hear from 2 amazing leaders from the city of Philadelphia, Benita Tillman and Adaminah Tankersly, who are family leaders in their organization, who actually took the coach approach beyond organizational life and have implemented this approach with their young adult children to amazing outcomes that they never would have expected. And lastly, we'll hear from Mark Durgin, who is the System of Care Grant Director in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, who actually has the audacity to believe that every single county in the state, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, will be trained in the coach approach, and those collaborative tables will look differently, they'll feel differently, and the outcomes will be different. And we'll be hearing from Mark around that, around their stories. Both Mark and his colleague Val Oulds, who is the Director of Behavioral Health, Val Wave, in Philadelphia, are associates of Coach Approach Partners, and they will also be teaching modules of the Coach Approach and leading us through several exercises so we can actually get a taste and a feel for the power of, shifting our way of being moving forward. So that is our team. for today. And want to sort of give you this this quote because it kind of goes back and anchors. Like, why change the way we talk? Like, why? And we're often in difficult conversations, right? And anytime we feel vulnerable or our self-esteem is implicated, when the issues at stake are important and the outcome is uncertain, when we care deeply about what is being discussed or about the people with whom we are discussing it, there is potential for us to experience the conversation as difficult. Well, I don't know about you, but nobody ever explained to me why I had to actually shift myself when I was in a difficult conversation versus when I was in a normal, sort of regular conversation where my vulnerability was not at stake, my self-esteem wasn't at stake, when the outcome wasn't uncertain, right? I'm one way that way, but when the conversation shifts, I need to shift. And that's what we're going to learn about today. So changing the conversation also really supports equity, diversity, and inclusion. And it really honors diversity. Because from the coach approach, we recognize that in order to have conversations in diversity, we have to establish trust. And we have to understand that the way we experience the world as a person is very different from the way another person has experienced perhaps the exact same thing. And that doesn't make one right and one wrong. We are leading in a space where we have legitimate competing perspectives, and we have not right or wrong, but we have right and right. So what happens when our perspectives are challenged, when the way we see things are not exactly the way we understand them, and we need to learn something different? And we are aware of our own cultural differences, and we hold that lightly. We love it. We embrace it for ourselves. Many of you who have been in trainings with me, I bring my full self in and I share with you exactly who I am. And yet when I'm engaged in work, I hold those experiences lightly for myself so that I can actually hear other people more deeply. And I'm aware of my biases and I hold those lightly as well. In this changing the conversation, the safety of creating spaces where we're seen and heard and valued, that's when it happens that we can build trust and connection. And that's what the coach approach will do. So the last thing I want to do before I turn it over to Mark, who's going to really share with us what is this coach approach, is I want to make a distinction around what is coaching versus other things that we do, many of us in this room. So Mark, if we could go to the slide, I want to sort of say to all of us, as we are growing and developing other people, we're going to be doing a lot of things, and all of it isn't coaching. Okay, all of it isn't coaching. We're going to bring in other things, and that's good. Don't forget, I was in technical assistance for a really long time, and I love to teach, right? But teaching and coaching are two really different things, really different things. And I have to know when to use which. It's like really the art of the dance. So we have often, as many of you in this room, especially those of you who have been through tons of experiences, you will be in the role of mentors. You will use your experience. You will advise. You will focus on the other person's future. But the expertise lies in you as the mentor. And actually, because the expertise lies in you, you hold the power in that power dynamic in a positive way, of course. The second thing you're going to also do is consulting. You know a lot, you're going to share what you know with other people, and we're going to use analysis and sort of breaking things down and apart and kind of putting things back together again, sharing what you've done and how you've done it. And the focus is also on the future. And who has the expertise? You. As the consultant, you know a lot and you hold the power. It's the same thing for those of us in the room who are providers, perhaps clinicians. You assess and you treat and you focus a lot on the past, which what brought you to the present. But the expertise also lies with the therapist or with the provider. And the power is still held with the provider or the therapist or the clinician in the journey, because the clinician is leading the journey. And coaching has a completely different paradigm shift, because the method of delivery is not in anything other than the other person in front of me is capable and competent. I believe that, and everything I do rests with that person. The focus is on the present. What are we going to do now to make things? What's the next step? And the person that holds the expertise is the person you are coaching. It is the person in front of you. It is the person who has all the knowledge and experience to solve their own problems, and the power is held with other people, not with you. So as we go into understanding the coach approach, it means giving up a little bit about what you know, the expertise that you have, the great teachers that you are, the great consultants that you are, and to actually really empower other people to step in and solve their own challenges. So if that has you intrigued, you're ready for a great journey. Mark, before we go, I want to see if there's any comments from the room on anything that I shared as sort of the framing for our day.
Actually, before we jump in, I just want to put one more kind of little piece. I think it's one of the big real distinctions that when we look at mentoring, consulting, therapy, and coaching, when we look at mentoring and consulting and therapy, many times those individuals are addressing the problem at hand. They're looking at the issue, the situation, and how to solve that. In coaching, we actually flip this a little bit. We don't coach the problem, because the problem is a part of this. What we do is really coach the person. And that is really that present piece of coaching the person so that they can really get this picture, this understanding of where they are in this challenge versus it's the challenge's fault. And that's, I think, one of the real big distinctions in coaching.
Yeah, which is exactly why, thank you, Mark, for that, which is exactly the way in which we, as leaders from any chair, help people be seen and heard, because we are looking at them as people as opposed to the situation as if they didn't even exist. Right? It's a whole little flip of the paradigm. So we'll talk a lot more about that as we go forward. So thank you for your being here, you're being with us on this journey. And as one of you said, you're excited to learn more. So Mark.
Yep. And just a couple other formalities or ground rules that we kind of want to put out there. Chat is great, and we want to hear your voice. So if you have a question, either use the raise hand piece or just unmute yourself and put it out there in the room, because that is honestly the way that we have found it's best to interact, is having those live questions. So even if we see it in chat, we may ask, could you put that out in the room? So just to be know that it's also interactive. So we're going to have some table groups, and we're even going to have a dyad practice. So we'll be sending you over for that as well. So just we really want you to enjoy your time, and I'm going to turn it over to Val, who's going to start to help us dive into the coach approach.
Okay, so here we go. I'm going to start out with what we call the coach approach mindset. And that mindset says that we believe others are capable and competent. We presume competence. It also means that our role as leaders is to strengthen others, build their skills, because our team is as strong as all of us, right? All of us. We also believe that there is more than one right answer. Now, some things have a pretty obvious yes and no answer, or, what color is the sun? It's yellow. Okay. However, most of the situations that we face and deal with are complex, and there really is more than one right answer. And we support critical thinking. And we do this by asking questions. And these questions will give rise to people's own solutions. That's how that works. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to talk about the coach approach skill set. And these are the skills that we'll be touching upon during this workshop. The first one being presence. And as you will see later, as we delve further into the skill sets, presence is really the heart of all of this, really the heart. Engaged listening is the other skill set. And again, we will delve a bit more into that, but what is it like to really be engaged and listen to someone? How do we do that? There's clarifying and reflecting so that we are clear that we really understand what the person is saying, that what we heard is what they are saying. Inquiry is all about the questions. It's about being curious, and it's about, delving in by asking really good questions. And we'll get into more of that as well later. Collaborative feedback. Again, how is it that we provide feedback that is really going to help build the other person in terms of their skills and their leadership? Anchoring accountability. How do we move forward with our commitments and support, in partnership, support that? And last but not least, we model the behavior. We show up the way we would like others to show up, as we want others to show up. So I'm not going to run through this entire model here, but this is the infographic that shows the cycle of the model. And it really does start with the very top box, which is established presence. Because as I said, presence is really at the heart. And clarify the focus, identifying goals, creating an action plan, commitment, and anchoring accountability. So those are the steps and skills that we'll be talking about a bit. So just wanted to introduce you to that. It will come up again later. And here we have core principles of the coach approach. Focus, which is all about presence, setting our intention and our commitment. Exploration, we're curious, we're open. Understanding by listening, that engaged listening that I just spoke of. Perspective taking, really being able to see things and the other person's being in their shoes. And recognition, really seeing and acknowledging that you understand what that person is about and what they're saying to you. And then the last principle is partnership. It really is about mutuality. It is not a top-down kind of relationship. It's about partnering. It's about sharing accountability. And again, about modeling what it is we want to see in others, how they show up. So I will now turn it over to Mark, who will talk about some brain science, but don't be afraid, it won't be a deep science dive. Go ahead, take it, Mark.
All right, thank you. So we want to take the moment just to really be able to talk about the context of why we're doing this and one of the big things that, of the reasons that we're doing this, is because the brain science is really guiding a lot of our work. We know that everybody that we work with, that we encounter, our family, our loved ones, our employees, our staff, want to feel safe, seen, and heard. They want to have this understanding that they are free and open to talk, that they are seen for who they are and their potential, and that you are really understanding what they're saying. We want this sense of control, to understand what our opportunities are, how we have autonomy, and what our role is in all of this. One of the most important things, and I think it's one of the things that has been so challenging, especially in this time of COVID, we want a sense of certainty, understanding and knowing where and what our future looks like. And I'll put a little pin on that certainty piece, because a lot of times when we say certainty, we think of positive. We can talk about this later, but certainty is not always positive. Certainty can be negative, yet it still can provide a sense of understanding and moving forward. And we want to see situations that are fair. Life's not fair, yet we really want to see these situations and know where we stand and know where the fairness is. The coach approach was developed for human services originally. And as we've done this with family members and youth and system partners, we have seen that the safe, seen, and heard, the sense of control, the sense of certainty and fairness is in every part, in every organization, every family, every community needs these to strive and be the people that we want to be. The other interesting thing that we've learned in brain science is we're wired to see threat, even if it's not there. Especially that threat that we're wired for is enhanced when we're under stress. We don't have a saber-toothed tiger roaming around our communities anymore. Yet that saber-toothed tiger probably looks a lot different. Could be a boss. Could be an unexpected phone call. Could be the school. When we think about and know that we're hardwired to imagine threat, it's really where we have to be and understand that what I'm seeing true? And how do I clarify it? How do I understand more? As leaders, our goal is to help others feel safe, seen, and heard. Trying to eliminate that threat through clarity and through other pieces, which we're going to talk about in a second. So our goal is really to change the way that people see the world around them. So there was the Neuro Leadership Institute, I think, David Rock. He developed this SCARF model. It goes back to this idea that we're wired for threats and rewards, and he broke it down into 5 domains. So the 5 domains that he talks about are this idea of status, how we imagine other people see us and value us in the world. This idea of certainty, how confident we are in the future and where we imagine ourselves in that future. And I said that idea of certainty can be both, it could be a positive certainty or it could be a negative certainty. Certainty is knowing where things are going. Even if it's not the best news, you still can have certainty in knowing what's going to happen. This idea of autonomy. It's our ability to act without influence or control from others. How many of us are micromanaged in our work? How many of us are told every step that we're supposed to take by systems, by employers, by everything? We're not provided autonomy in a lot of what we do. Yet when we're trying to change our conversation, to change our habits, to change the way we're interacting, we are really trying to build that autonomy in others, because we do believe that when people have autonomous decisions, they can make good decisions. We're also looking at how related we are, how we're connected to other people. And ultimately, we're looking at fairness. We're always comparing how we're treated compared to others. And as leaders, it's our job to provide higher status, to provide that certainty, to provide the autonomy, to give and help understand why things and how things are happening, even if it's not fair. And it's our job as leaders to relate to others. Great philosophy of SCARF. Yet, the world around us is volatile. It's uncertain, it's complex, and it's ambiguous. We're trying to move forward with SCARF, but yet what we're seeing is what we call the VUCA reality. So this was developed by the Army War College in 1992, and it was directly related to war in the military. Yet, when we look at this, and we look at just the small definitions of the volatility, the nature and speed of change, everything is changing all the time. Uncertainty. How many of us lack predictability of what tomorrow brings, of what next week brings? The world is uncertain. The idea of complexity. We often have multiple things at play, competing goals, competing things that are taking our attention. And ambiguity. This general haze and mixed meanings. Why are we here? What are we doing? Our role as coaches is to help others thrive in this world that is challenging. We must be wary of our own experience and expertise. And that's the one thing I love about using the coach approach model. Our experience and expertise plays such a small role because we believe that the person has the ability. We're using the other person's knowledge to help them adapt to this changing world. And ultimately, we're trying to be curious, explore situations, to increase that idea of SCARF and decrease some of the VUCA reality. One of the other things that we talk about in the coach approach to adaptive leadership, and I wanted to kind of see if there was anybody in the room that had ever heard of the ladder of inference or Chris or Jerry's, besides people who have taken the coach approach. Anybody has ever heard of Chris or Jerry's or the ladder of inference? Raise your hand or unmute and let us know.
Well, I did in the training we're now in.
Yep. You want to talk about it, or you want me to?
No, you can go ahead and talk. I mean, I'm kind of learning it, and I even went back in my workbook and looked over it again. But yeah, but I am fascinated by it.
Yeah. So we're actually going to watch a video on it. So I'm not going to go into it in a great bit of detail. The ladder of inference is an instantaneous thing that happens. High level, and then we're going to watch a video. We have too much information to take in. So we pick what we want. We pick the data that's meaningful to us. We add our meanings, we add our values, we add our history to the data or the information that's there. It's our lens, is how we're seeing the world. From that limited data that we collect, we make assumptions. We make action from those assumptions, and we move forward. Happens in a split second. Put yourself back in high school for a second. In homeroom, one of your peers is called to the principal's office. What's the first thing that you think about? Someone's getting called to the principal's office.
They in trouble.
They're in trouble? Yep. Yeah. Ladder of inference. All we know is they were called to the principal's office. We put maybe some data. Hey, maybe that child was in trouble before. We know them, blah, blah, blah. They're going to the office. Could it be they forgot their lunch and their mom brought it? Just a real simple example about kind of when we jump without all of the information. Our job in coaching is to go back to that data piece. Go back to that data piece. Really start to see what's observable and take note of that. So we're going to watch a couple-minute video. This is a TED Talk on the ladder of inference. Question? Oh, okay.
No, I was just giggling because it was a TED's talk. I love TED's talks.
Yeah, this one was actually more of a TED cartoon.
Ever been cut off? Imagine a microscopic-sized ladder contained in the part of our brain that will label our subconscious. The ladder of inference, which was first proposed by Harvard professor Chris Argyris, is the basis of this model. Every time we interact with someone, that experience enters the ladder at the bottom. That same experience zips up the ladder in the blink of an eye, exiting at the top. This process happens thousands of times a day without us knowing it. Let's focus on what happens on each rung of the ladder. On the first rung, we have the raw data and observations of our experience. This is very similar to what someone watching a video recording of our experience would see. Moving up to the second rung, we filter in specific information and details from our experience. We unknowingly filter based on our preferences, tendencies, and many other aspects that we believe are important. Onto the third rung, we assign meaning to the information we have filtered through. This is where we start to interpret what our information is telling us. On the fourth rung, a very crucial thing happens. We develop assumptions based on the meaning we created on the previous rung, and we start to blur the distinction between what is fact and what is story. On the fifth rung, we develop conclusions based on our assumptions. This is also where our emotional reactions are created. On the sixth rung, we adjust our beliefs about the world around us, including the person or people involved in our experience of the moment. On the seventh and final rung, we take action based on our adjusted beliefs. Still with me? Great! Let's take a real-life example and run it up the ladder to see how this all works. Have you ever been cut off in a parking lot, signal light on, as you steer toward your coveted spot only to slam on your brakes at the last minute as someone pulls in front of you and steals your spot away? Imagine that experience and notice all of the data and observations landing on the first rung of your ladder. Now let's watch what we pay attention to on the second rung. Who cares that it's sunny out and the birds are chirping? The 50% off sign outside of your favorite store is meaningless. You filter in the sensation of your grip tightening on the wheel, you feel your blood pressure rise, you hear the squeal of your brakes, and you notice the expression on the face of the other driver as he pulls in front of you and quickly looks away. Time for our third rung. Ever since you were young, your parents taught you the importance of waiting in line and taking your turn. You live and die by the rule of first come, first served. And now this guy has just stolen your spot. What gives? Up to the fourth rung we go. Watch closely as our assumptions take over and our story creates itself. That stupid jerk. Didn't his parents teach him anything? How could he not see my signal light? He must never pay attention. Why does he think he's more important than anyone else? Jumping quickly to the fifth rung, we conclude that this guy is heartless, inconsiderate, he needs to be taught a lesson and put in his place. We feel angry, frustrated, vindictive, justified. On our sixth rung, we adjust our beliefs based on the experience. That's the last time I give in. Next time someone tries to cut me off, tires will be smoking on the pavement as I squeal past them into my spot. And finally, our last rung, we take action. We back up, pull up behind his car, honk our horn, and roll down our window to scream a few choice words his way. Now, imagine, he walks over quickly, apologizing. His wife, who is almost due with their first baby, called him from inside the mall to say she is in labor and needs to get to the hospital immediately. We are momentarily shocked, apologize profusely, and wish him luck as he rushes toward the entrance. What just happened here? What changed? Why is this so significant? In our parking lot example, our beliefs were short-circuited by the ladder of the other individual. My wife is in labor. I need to get there quick. There's a parking spot. Phew! Oh, geez, I cut someone off. I better apologize quickly so they don't think I'm a jerk. But what if we were able to short-circuit our ladders ourselves? Proactively, by choice. Guess what? We can. Let's return to our unique human function of free will. Next time you notice yourself reacting to your experience, pay focused attention to your ladder. Ask yourself what beliefs are at play, and where did they come from? What data and observations did you filter in as a result of your beliefs, and why? Are your assumptions valid and supported by facts? Would a different set of assumptions create different feelings and result in new and better conclusions and actions? We all have our own unique ladder. Be mindful of yours and help others to see theirs.
So I just wanted to see if there was any reflection from the video on the ladder of inference. Thoughts, perspectives.
For me, that was a wonderful video. This is Jacqueline from New York.
So your internet cut, or maybe mine. I think you said it was a wonderful video.
Yes, it is. Sometimes, people view things the wrong way because of like what was mentioned in the prior slides, like our experiences and things like that. So sometimes we come to an assumption that something is when it's really not. Because at the end of the video, the man was rushing because he wanted to get, his wife to the hospital. Now, this scenario is funny to me because it's like my husband goes through this situation quite often, and it made me chuckle because this happened, like I said, on several occasions, and he was getting ready to pull into a parking spot. Somebody zoomed right in front of him. So he started doing the same thing. But going back to the video of what is basically trying to portray is that sometimes people assume things are bigger than what they actually are. Sometimes you have to wait and analyze and see the whole full picture without coming to a form of assumption.
Yeah, beautifully said. The reality is we all have this ladder. We all are making judgments on information. The ladder is not bad. The ladder keeps you safe. It can really help. It's just a matter of starting to realize, am I jumping? Am I jumping those rungs to get to a conclusion when I don't have all the information? One thing I love is he talked about feeling his blood pressure rise. So it's like starting to look back at yourself and your body. It's like, okay, am I starting to feel things? Am I moving in a direction because of this jumping to conclusions without having all the information?
I
go
have
ahead.
a comment. I've seen this before a little bit. I came today so I could get better at the coach approach. So sometimes I find that when I'm in that situation, it's going up my ladder. I can interfere just by saying to myself, I don't know what the other person's got going on today. That's all I have to say to myself. And then it kind of calms me down and helps me not to get that blood pressure rising and things like that. So it's because I don't have the certainty all the time, and I'm not going to get the certainty. So I try to create it for myself,
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I just want to comment.
Yeah. So what I mean, I really appreciate you kind of putting that out there, that you're even able to recognize that I don't know what they're coming from. So until I know that, it's difficult for me to move forward. And you're basically putting that little short circuit there to say, I'm not going to jump to conclusions until I get more data, until I get more information. Love it. I think, Val, I think you're going to talk real quick.
Okay. Yep. All right. So in essence, a coach approach to leadership means that we are present, focused, and listening to understand, building a sense of being seen, what we've been talking about, being seen and heard. We ask questions that will build the other person's critical thinking skills, which will help the person to build control. We will offer mostly positive feedback, which creates a sense of certainty and safety. And we are open to other perspectives and encourage feedback, building fairness. And again, the taking perspectives, that, up the ladder, and then being able to say, hey, let me take the other person's perspective. And also being open to getting feedback ourselves. The mutuality of that as well. Okay. So when we use the coach approach to adaptive leadership, it's about asking more questions, giving less direction, not micromanaging. We focus on strength and skill development over time. It's not going to happen day one. So over time, in addition to what we have to do day to day in terms of, the day to day with people, instruction or oversight. And we are offering more affirming, grounded assessment and feedback so that we can strengthen the other person's skills. And we look for those opportunities where that person can further develop. Because what we want to see people and support people in stretching and having those opportunities. We are using the language of commitment. What is it that you are committed to? And holding team members accountable for what they commit to. We also, though, are seeking feedback from our team. How can we be more effective in how we work with them? So being open to that reciprocal feedback. And we are consciously always modeling adaptive, strengths-based leadership. Always. So very important. How we interact, how we show up, and how we model that is powerful. It's powerful.
So now we have the opportunity to see how this plays out in real life. And I want to reintroduce Janice Schutz, who is the Executive Director of the Washington State Community Connectors, who's going to share her journey of bringing in adaptive leadership and the use of the coach approach to transform her organization and to transform the way in which families are integrated in system of care development in the state of Washington. Janice, over to you.
Thank you so much for the introduction. I'm so happy to be here today. And first and foremost, I'm a parent. That's what brought me here. That's what brought me to the family community in Washington State. And that's what drives my passion for system change and what's happening in our state in Washington. And as in many states, things were very messy and still are in our state when it comes to our family community, what's happening at the state level with service delivery. When I came onto the scene, there was a statewide family organization, and I wasn't super familiar with it. I was just kind of getting in there, and it dissolved. It fell apart. The organization just disbanded. And a few years after that, I heard through the grapevine that somebody had gathered a statewide group of family leaders and asked the question, do we want to try again for a family organization in our state? And I was working at a job as a lead parent partner in a small family org at that time. And I was super interested in this, but unfortunately, I wasn't allowed to attend that meeting. I really wanted to be there, but I couldn't go. And so I heard, they spent a couple of days together, and I heard some decisions were actually made. Like, they didn't even anticipate that decisions would be made at that meeting. They just wanted to know if there was interest. And I heard that the group decided, yes, 100%, we want to try again to have a statewide family organization. And we want it to be different this time. We think, we've learned a little from the past. We want to take a different approach. We want this organization to have a bigger mission. And we're a very large and diverse state. We're large geographically, and we're diverse. We have a major metro area, right? We have Seattle, and we also have these little tiny communities on islands that are only accessible by boats, right? And then we have huge communities from different tribes that have very little access to outside services. So there's lots of things going on in our state. And so there's lots of different perspectives and competing perspectives. But everybody in that room all agreed on kind of a big overarching thing, that they wanted this organization to be an umbrella that connected all those smaller groups in our state with communication, making sure all the different organizations knew that the others existed, and offering trainings and that kind of thing. I was super excited to hear this. And, as soon as I could, I stepped in to volunteer to help and became a member of the steering committee. Now, right away, there were a lot of conflicts and assumptions made about how this would all happen, right? Because we already had the history of this organization that kind of failed. And one of the leaders from that organization was in a position of leadership that was helping to form this new organization. So think about this, right? The community is looking at this person and thinking, why are you in that role? You were a part of a failure. Like, why should we listen to you, right? And do we trust you? Do we trust you to lead this? Because you made some bad choices, obviously, right? Because the organization you were leading failed. So I'm stepping into this. I know some of the history, but I wasn't a part of it. And I'm just excited. I want everything to work, right? So I'm volunteering and I'm stepping up. And I was on the steering committee. I helped get a first board installed. And I kept moving into more and more leadership roles as a volunteer, right? So I have another job completely unrelated to this. And I'm like, I just want to be a volunteer. I want to help this organization in whatever capacity I can. But I'm super invested, and I'm weighed down kind of by a lot of the community perceptions and beliefs. And then the organization gets its first funding. They go through, they get their 501c3, they get their first funding contract from the state. They apply and they receive it. oh, so much drama. They find out that, you know, the funding they have is specific. It's tied to specific deliverables, right? That's what funding does. And those deliverables are really narrow compared to what this broad group of people wanted to accomplish, right? And so right away, everybody snaps into total mistrust. We were lied to. We were told we were going to be able to do this and this and this. And now we have this contract that says we can only do this one little piece and we have to follow all these rules. And oh, so much disappointment. And many people who had been supporting the organization kind of faded into the woodwork and left this little core of us that were like, we can still do it. We'll figure it out. We'll make it work, right? And so gradually I ended up becoming a board member because several board members faded away, and I had some expertise. I am a small business owner, and so I know about bookkeeping and some things like that. And so I stepped in as board treasurer. And this constant battle, you know, was going on between what we had funding to do and what our community wanted us to do. And then we had this whole dynamic that we had zero control over, which was that our community didn't always trust our organization because they saw us as being developed by this individual in this leadership role who had already failed the community in one way, right? And so I'm battling all of that, and then boom, our state contact, who is the person that our community doesn't trust right now, says to us, we're going to change up one of your deliverables. We want you, instead of doing your parent weekend, we want you to work with Ellen Kagen, and you are going to hold you're going to hold an event where your community comes and gives you feedback about what they want from you and what's not working and what great things you have accomplished in the years. And then you're going to hold a leadership academy with Ellen Kagen, right? So this is the way it's presented to us. It's you have to do this because we said so, and here's your funding, and oh, you know, you're going to work with this person, Ellen Kagen. Now, I had heard of Ellen Kagen, but I didn't know Ellen Kagen, and I didn't have any understanding of why this might be a good thing for our organization at this time. Because I'm thinking, but our parents really want a parent weekend, and what's the point of doing this leadership work when we have all these people who aren't even, you know, buying into what we do? And so I was not happy, and I was the board treasurer, right? I'm not the executive director. I'm not even the board chair. I'm just the board treasurer. And so we entered into our first conversations, right? And the first couple did not go well. I won't lie. They did not go well. I was not on board. And a lot of this was because my team was telling me to not be on board, right? This is wrong. We're being forced to do something that we didn't want to do. This isn't what our community needs or wants at this time. So I wasn't really open to hearing why this might be a good thing. And we ended up doing a lot of meetings about planning and figuring this out. And I started learning little by little in those planning meetings what we were actually going to be a part of. And that gave me a chance to kind of say, oh, well, this could be helpful, but it could be helpful in a different way than I think I'm being told it will be helpful. So I was being told Ellen Kagen came and did some work in our state a few years ago, and we want to continue that work. And we want the people who were involved in that work 4, 5, 6 years ago to come back and do more work. And so my answer to the state was, yeah, that's great, but most of those people don't care, aren't involved anymore, have moved into higher positions and don't have time for this. What if we take this as an opportunity to create new leaders in our state, and we bring in new, fresh people who have more energy. And my state partner was actually open to that idea. They didn't just shoot it down and say, no, you know, this is the way it's going to be. They actually heard what I was saying and were willing to kind of adapt our approach. Guess what? We started being partners instead of having this kind of distrustful, antagonistic relationship. So that kind of opened my mind to, like, I hadn't been taking the lead in relationships because, right, I'm the board treasurer. It's not really my role. But I was kind of the person who got thrown into really working on this project because everybody else was too busy with everything. And I was willing to take the time, right? And that's what happens with our family leaders, right? It's the person who says, I'm willing to take the time and do it, that gets the role. It's not necessarily about what position anybody holds. It's somebody's willingness to actually step in and do some work. And that's where I was like, oh, whatever, I want to make this work. And so I stepped in, and I had invested a lot of time as a volunteer. And really, you know, this organization is a passion project of mine at this point, right? I'm not employed by it. I'm a volunteer. It has deep meaning for me as a community member, and I want it to succeed. You know, I've invested by this point, you know, about 4 years of some solid volunteer time, and I want this to work. And so I'm meeting with Ellen and Jane and our state leader, and I'm learning, and I'm really excited. And then what happens? The world came. So we scheduled our first Leadership Academy for January of 2020, right before the pandemic. Not bad, right? This could have happened. But what happens is, again, we're a huge, diverse state, and we wanted people from all over our state to attend. Well, they're forecasting the biggest snowstorm to hit our area in a couple of years, for like a couple of days before the Leadership Academy, or possibly the day of the Leadership Academy. Now, I don't know if many of you are familiar with Washington State, but we have mountains, we have desert, we have coastline, and most of our state flies into a complete and utter panic at the thought of a snowflake. Okay, this is because our coastal region is very hilly, hard to navigate, and rarely gets snow. So when it does get snow, you can't drive. Like, even if you're from an area where there's snow and you know how to drive in snow, they don't plow. It's hilly. There's steep roads that don't get plowed and don't get salted or sanded. You're stuck. You're like, a snowstorm can completely shut down the whole Seattle metro area. Like, even a flurry of snow sends people into an utter panic. So after much discussion back and forth, we decided that we were going to have to cancel our Leadership Academy and reschedule, because we were afraid people might not be able to fly in or drive in from the different parts of our state. And we rescheduled it for the end of March 2020. And you all know what happened in the beginning of March 2020. So after all this planning and everything that went on, you know, it wasn't to be. We did eventually hold our Leadership Academy, and we did it online. Now, it wasn't the very first online Leadership Academy that Ellen led, but it was, I think, the second. And, you know, we weren't sure how that was going to go. We really wanted to do it in person, and we couldn't. So we did our Leadership Academy, and it was amazing. And then a couple of months later, we did our coach approach. And throughout all of this time, I am using, and some of our community members are using, the new skills that we learned in the coach approach and the Leadership Academy to behave differently in our state, towards our state leaders, towards each other as organizations and individuals in our community. And what happened over that 2 years was amazing. I mean, I can't even believe the amount of participation and buy-in we got from really important community members who had taken a step back because things didn't go as expected when we first got our contract for services in the state. We had some really important family leaders in our state step back in and start participating with our organization. We have increased our participation probably about 500%, literally, over these last couple of years. And what's more is that person that was completely distrusted at the state level that our organization needed to partner with, we have a very close and trusting working relationship now. And because of that, our organization has been able to take risks and grow in ways that we never would have before. And so, Mark, I would ask you, put up the little slide I made, because that's my visual that I wanted to work with. Because when I was looking for a visual to explain our story, this is what came to me. So if you notice the logo on the left, it's really colorful, representing the diversity of our family community. This is a logo that we came up with as a group when we were in our developmental stages. We had a large weekend gathering of family members. We did, a lot of work as a group of what do we want our logo to look like. And note that the tree trunk is actually hands, right? It's hands holding up the leaves, right? So there's this symbolism. I have a lot of buy-in on this particular logo because, number one, my husband, Tim, is a graphic artist, and he designed this logo after listening to all the feedback, like from the community. Like we went out and we tried, to find stuff that could work. And he said, well, I'll just make it. And so, there's hands of all different colors. Some of the hands have little hearts cut out in them. It's my husband's actual hands. Like I took a picture of his hands and then he used his art to color them and make them look like a tree trunk. And the words, so this is, our organization, our community created this logo together, right? But notice some things about it, like the tree is just flat. It's not growing out of anything. It's just there, right? There's the tree. And, some hands have bright color and some have a dark color and some have the heart inside and some don't. So there's a lot of differences there. Well, as we were growing as an organization, my board said, we need to update our logo. We need a fresh new look. We don't feel like this logo represents where we are as an organization anymore. I, of course, was not happy with that idea, but by this time, I'm executive director. Whoever thought I would be executive director of a family org? I never thought I would, but here I am, right? I'm in this role now. And so I feel like, okay, I've got to do this. And what I found from exploring and working with different graphic designers, and this took months to develop this new logo, but look at the difference. Our state of Washington is there, and our tree is rooted in the heart of our state. And our tree has branches that are growing out into all the different areas of our state. And some of them are strong and sturdy, and some of them are new and just growing. And this is the journey. This is the visual representation of the journey that the Coach Approach and the Leadership Academy took our family community and our state on. So I would love it if anybody has questions about how this worked. And yes, as you can imagine, the ladder of inference and scarf and VUCA, you know, all of those things, I had to set aside my whole belief system and be willing to take some personal and professional risk to make these changes.
Thank you so much, Janice. You know, as I'm listening to you, I'm reflecting back on even our first interaction, where the bias and the mental models were sort of really at play, not even knowing, you know, who I was as a person. I certainly also had not really met you, and how the transformation is also manifest in our relationship as well. So I wanted to personally thank you for that, and just share that with the group, that what was holding Janice back was herself. It was her own mental models of the person at the state, the being told to do things, that the, you know, the legacy leaders, the new like there were just so many perspectives, and how you really beautifully grounded and kind of used the coach approach and the adaptive leadership framework to ground yourself and to recognize the moment you were in and the opportunity that you had to lead. Not easy work, not easy work. I want to open up the floor for a question or two before we take a bit of a stretch break. This is truly leadership in the vortex. Janice's story, and that with the VUCA swirling all around, and how she managed her scarf so beautifully, and led with such grace. Anita, did I see you reaching for just to ask a question?
No.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah, well, let me just say that, you know, this was not an easy journey, right? I had to completely reset my thinking, and I really had to be willing, and continue to be willing, to stop jumping the ladder and making assumptions about people's motivations. And that inquiry piece is so important, because, you know, going all the way back to when I was told, you're going to do this. We're going to, you know, this contract now contains this deliverable basically, and you're going to do it. You know, if back then I had been brave and confident enough to say, find out what was behind that, what was really driving that, because I had missed a whole series of conversations leading up to that, right? There had been discussions with our state person and Ellen and others who made this decision together. I wasn't a part of that. So I didn't know what was driving it. And if I had known that earlier in the process, it would have been different, but that's okay, because it all worked out the way it worked out, which was beautifully. So
we're hoping that in the future, Janice, we can't wait to see what happens in the state of Washington as you continue to lead and grow and develop other leaders who are now surrounding you, and her committees are now packed. People show up, and it is truly a statewide network from this experience. So I think it would be important to, Janice, thank you, to take a little bit of a stretch break. We'll take 5 minutes. People grab some water, and just turn your cameras off if you have them on, and we'll literally mark it for 5 minutes, and we'll bring you back for the next conversation. Thank you, Janice. Thank you, Val and Mark, for this morning.
Hello.
All right, I want to invite everyone back from our little stretch break. If we were together, we would be doing all sorts of exercises to keep us going. I want to thank again Janice for sharing such a vulnerable story. One of the things that should be really evident, especially after seeing so many names in this room of people who have been leading statewide family organizations for 20 years, that now this momentum is finally sort of gathering moss and will become a really strong powerhouse. And to Janice's credit, really understanding the leadership moment. And we're going to hear more about those leadership moments when we shift from being human, which is jumping the ladder and having our biases lead us and defending ourselves and telling ourselves, to really asking what is a very coach approach, leaderly way of being, which is tell me more. Tell me more. When we hear things that don't sit well and that aren't landing in good places, we want to shift to the tell me more. So how do we do that? How do we do that? So the coach approach has both this mindset shift, which we just talked about, and it has skill sets, which we now have the pleasure of Val Oulds walking us through and giving us an opportunity even to practice in our time together. So Val, take it away.
Actually, I'm gonna borrow it first. So one of the things that we're going to talk about in just a second is this idea of presence. And with that, I want to take us through a presence practice. Val is going to be talking a lot more about why we do presence and the pieces behind it. The reality is we want to be there for the other person. So in order to get ourselves present, we sometimes call it grounding, or getting ourselves just in a state where we're open. So with that, I will invite you, if you're comfortable, to close your eyes or lower your gaze. I invite you to sit back in your seat or your chair and just feel yourself starting to be supported. With that, I want you to take a nice deep breath in through your nose and hold. And out through your mouth. Breathe in and hold. And out through your mouth. Just continuing on that frame of breath of in through your nose and out through your mouth. And as you're breathing, if you're holding tension, give yourself an opportunity to work some of that tension out. You're holding it in your jaw, your brow, shoulders. And breathe in, hold, and out. And with that, I want you to bring your attention to your hands. Focusing on your hands. Are they warm? Cold? Can you feel the air against your skin? Just bringing your attention to your hands. Breathe in, hold, and out. And I want you to bring your attention all the way down to your feet. Make sure to put them against the ground or the floor. And just notice the bottoms of your feet. Notice the pressure from the floor to your feet. And breathe in, hold, and out. I just want you to focus on that ground, that connection for just a moment. The ground beneath you supports you, and it connects you to others, both near and far. Breathe in, hold, and breathe out. And with that, I invite you to come back. So, as we're going to have Val talk about presence now, just wanted to note if there was anyone from the group reflection on a presence activity. All right, send it over to Val. Get us into some of our skills.
I will say, Mark,
Oh,
I always enjoy these. Every time we do them, and it's got me to doing them on a regular basis now. So I would like to say, I'm sure I've done them in the past, but I've forgotten all about all of that before I first got involved with this training. So I appreciate that thought and that mindset being brought back to remind me how important that it is.
Yeah. So I heard you learned it in the coach approach, trying to do it more and more often, and it also sounds like just having that reminder there has been very helpful.
Yeah, and I was first introduced to it, I will say, to doing it this way back when I worked at CSB of Middle Georgia, and we had one of the females that worked there. She's such a wonderful person, and she would do mindfulness activities with us. And there was one she done where she had these little dots she would put on your hand, and the color of the dot would kind of tell your mood. Well, there was a lot of us, mine included, that was a black when it was first put on, which is like totally stressed out and anxiety and all that stuff. And then as you do the activity, it would change color. And it actually did. When the activity was over, mine had gone completely green, which meant relaxed and more at peace and more. So, that kind of is, that was my first real moment to understand and believe in what it actually does to you, because I actually seen that change. So I would, yeah, these are amazing.
Beautiful.
I see Bonnie, yeah, has her hands up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, this is also a good reminder to remind us, you know, and especially if we're getting ready to go into what would typically be considered a stressful situation, to just take a step back and breathe. It's one of those things that, unfortunately, a few weeks ago, I learned very quickly we take for granted because we don't necessarily think about it. When I had double pneumonia and breathing became a chore, this is one of those things that we can use as a daily reminder, you know, take a step back, breathe, and then come back in. And it kind of helps refresh your mindset to where you're not completely stressed out and completely worrying about all the different ways something can turn out or go wrong or things like that.
Great. Thank you. Again, I'm hearing about that idea. It's almost having that trigger there to kind of get you back into that state, and the reminders there. Beautiful.
Okay. So we are now going to go into the first skill set.
Val, I just see Corinne also has her hand up.
Oh, I couldn't see that. Thanks
Yeah,
for that.
sure.
Hi, this is, well, I go by Corey too, so.
Okay,
Hi.
Corey, good. Sorry.
And I just threw my hand up at last minute, so no one really forgot about me or anything. But one thing that I wanted to say was, you know, it's, I've worked in mental health for a really long time, and I just recently left my job and went to as a family peer support specialist. So, but one thing that in my journey, I should say, that it was a process, you know, like everything's a process for us. So the way how we work with our families or clients or whoever it is, it's all a process. Like we learn our families, we understand them, we build a rapport, but our own issues, our own things, you know, could get in the way. And I know I worked with a client with personality disorder, and she would take a lot of energy, and she would take energy off of people, or that was kind of just one of the things that she observed herself. So it's the energy that you presented was what she would take. So I knew I had to do certain things before I'd go to meet her, where I knew that I had to calm myself, I had to be in a better place, and I had to also be very strict with my boundaries. So she was always looking for certain things, you know, certain attention, or I'm your favorite, right? Things like that. And I never made it individualized. I always said, all of my clients are my favorites, you know? So I always put her into that group, and that worked the best for her. But I also really understood her more than I think that she's ever been understood before. So that was a really hard hit when I was leaving. So it was a process. It was very much a process to kind of get her to the place to accept the fact that I was leaving and that she was not being abandoned. But the other thing too, with this new position that I'm in, still got to think about our own journeys that we're on, where I just had this big, huge journey myself of changing a job because I didn't have that support at all. You know, I was burning out. I said what I needed, which was not unmanageable. And they refused it and told me that I had to work halfway with them, but they weren't even meeting me halfway. So I just said, okay, then I'm done. So basically threw my career for that away for myself, because I needed to look at my own self, my own mental health, and what I was capable of doing and knowing what I could handle. And I didn't want to do an injustice to my clients, because I knew that I wouldn't be able to take on more clients. And I had a very high caseload as it was. But I've been on this journey, you know, some medical issues came up and things like that, but I was on this journey, and I actually did this, a group, mindfulness of the caregiver, and I actually participated in it and found the yoga and the breathing and just the other things that I never did over the year and a half that we've been, sitting and doing all of these things and being mindful of, self-care and things like that. I never participated because I never valued myself enough, I guess. So seeing all of this stuff now, because I always put everybody before me. And now I'm saying like, hey, I'm listening to the universe and I'm realizing what my own personal goal is and why I'm here and what I can use to help people. But I also need to know what my biases are as well. And letting people, I've always used motivational interviewing and all kinds of things like that. So I'm really skilled in all of that stuff. But it's letting the parents come to, you're leading them. The only thing you're doing is providing information for them to make an informable decision on which directions they want to go. So there was a point that I was trying to make and it just bypassed me. So I'm sorry.
Thank you. So I think some of the key things I think I heard you state were, because you talked about kind of moving from clinical to the family peer piece, and you really started talking about kind of using that grounded, that centering piece for when you're noticing in yourself that things were escalated. And then I think you've kind of followed it all up with how helpful and just that reminder of that mindfulness has been in getting you there.
It is. And the universe speaks to you in so many different ways. And it's just being open enough to see it and to hear it. And I think that was one of the things that I wanted to say when you were talking about going up the ladder too, is that our own environment has affected our own reactions. So, by seeing this and learning the correct way how to go about it is allows you to get more grounded so that you're not influencing everyone around you with what you experienced. Mm-hmm. If I said that correctly.
I think so.
Yeah, Corey, you cannot do the work you do effectively without being in that space. And that's why Val and Mark have shared with us that the very first, most foundational, critical, crucial piece to changing the conversation and being the change we want to see is through presence. Val.
Okay, so I'm going to invite you all to take a look at this slide. Mindful or mindful. And how does this land on you? Which of these two, the woman or her dog, can you relate to in terms of their bubbles above their heads?
I can relate to the woman.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to be where the dog is, but at this point, in this moment of my life, I'm where the woman is.
Yep. Someone else in the chat is saying the one on the left, the woman. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's, most of us, right? We all have 20 different things going on, and that's the importance of focusing on what's right in front of you and what you're facing right in that moment.
Yes, same. Yes. We live complex lives, right? Lots going on. I presented this the other day and someone said, oh, I've run out of room. It's so crowded in there. So, yeah. So we have to find some way, right, to be able to let go so we can be present, because there's so much going on in our heads. So we're going to talk more about that. So another key component of this work that we do in order to build others and support them using coach approach is around managing emotions. And in the field that many of you are in, perhaps you're doing work directly with families, supporting them in some way, or in another context. And it can trigger something in ourselves as we do this work. And so these are some tips around how can you manage some of those challenging emotions that may come up. One is, we want to remember, why am I here with this person? What is my purpose for being here? And commit to staying present because that person is worth it. And again, the pause and breathing, so important. It really settles your system. And just notice in yourself and in others. Be present, still, center. Ask yourself, how am I showing up to support this person? Am I frazzled? Am I anxious? Am I upset in some way? So what is it that I need to do to show up in a better way, in a way that will be supportive, in serving that person? And I love this saying, still the body, calm the heart, quiet the mind. Also, notice that if you get resistance or pushback from the other person, that also is information around what's going on at the heart of things for that person. There's more to explore there. And stay on the balcony. That is, you're going to take the higher view, be able to see the perspective and not get stuck in your own head around things. Be present. And remember, and I love this line, you are in service of their learning. Of their learning. Okay. So we're going to delve into now the skill of engaged listening. And they're basically, we say, 4 modes of listening. One is superficial. You're really, you're pretending you're listening. You're really not listening. You're in your phone. You're doing other things. Another is self-referential. Someone starts talking and you then make it all about you. They're talking about their trip that they took to Europe. You're suddenly like, oh yeah, and I went to Germany and then I went, and then it takes off with their story. And then this is one I think a lot of us can relate to, the problem solvers, right? Right? We're in this profession because we wanted to help people. We want to fix problems. Okay. And the 4th mode, which is what we're going to talk about in terms of the skill that really is needed here in the coach approach, is engaged listening. Here we are. What does engaged listening look like? So when we are engaged and really listening, we are listening to understand what the person is saying, not what is the thing we're going to say in response. And I know that's a habit sometimes that I have found myself in. And it's this inclination to, what am I going to say in response? It's more about leaving the space open to hear and listen. Put aside distractions. Put aside the phone. Try to put it on mute. We get easily distracted. Put those aside. And be aware of your internal thoughts. Again, like the woman in the prior with the walking the dog. We don't want to be her at this time. Let them go. We want to use empathy. We want to see things from the other person's perspective. We want to be open. And we want to be curious with that person. We want to bring a real sense of curiosity to the conversation. Now, much of what people say is not what they actually are saying. It's nonverbal. And so watch for body language and listen for what may not be being said by the person. There's something there. So listen for that too. And we talk about this heart of the matter for people. The heart of the matter, what really is at stake for this person? What is really at the core of why they are engaged in this conversation with you? So listen out for that. And allow room for their emotions. And something many people, including myself, can have a little trouble with, which is silence. That break in the conversation where it's quiet. That silence is often what's needed for true processing and engaging in getting to, as we say, that heart of the matter that I just referred to. Next slide. Okay, I'm going to do the first practice together in pairs. You'll be placed in pairs and you will each share a story with the other. You can pick one of these, your favorite game as a child, the best meal you ever had, a vacation you've always wanted to go on, and you will practice listening to the other person's story without needing to solve it or fix it, really using engaged listening to that person's story. And folks will have, how long are we going to give people, Mark, for this entirely? 10 minutes? 7 minutes?
Yeah, Mark, in setting up the breakout rooms, we were going to do 8 minutes with a 2-minute warning, if I remember correctly. Is that right, Mark?
Yeah, but okay.
8 minutes?
Yeah. So there's nothing to solve here.
No, just sharing your story. And the other person is listening. And then you'll switch. And you'll each have about 4 minutes. Any questions about the activity?
Will we get a notice at 4 minutes?
Mhm.
So we know it's time to switch. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Did you see Randall's comment? How did you put that in the room?
A huge need to fix everything as a man. Okay, yes.
All right. So we'll see you all in a couple minutes, and the instructions are in chat, and they should follow you in.
All right. Enjoy your conversation.
Crisis averted.
Well, not really.
Oh.
I was in a room by myself.
Yeah,
I was in a room with somebody who
wasn't there.
wasn't there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's going to be the problem that we're going to run into. Let me see here.
Do you have an extra room to put Kyle and Beth in?
Mm-hmm. The problem is, okay. It's
Breakout rooms never work exactly as intended, but hey, pretty close. So
Thank you for your patience, Beth. Erin, we know you're driving, so we're really worried about you at the moment.
Hey, I stopped. I was trying to access my phone and it wouldn't let me. So I apologize. So I was turning off. That's why I haven't been on camera. I'm on a trip. So I'll just wait till the breakout room's over. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. So Carolyn, can we assume you're not there? Andrea, it looks like you're here.
I just had to log back in. I'm sorry I got booted out. So yeah, I'm back. I don't know if I could be paired up with anyone.
I don't mind being paired with her for a minute. I got booted out as well when I was, some reason when I went to turn on my microphone, it booted me out. So
same here. Same here.
Okay, good. That makes me feel better. I didn't do something wrong. So, but I don't know how much time we have left. I have my camera off. I apologize. I'm driving. So I didn't know if we are in a breakout or could we be placed together for the remaining time
or do you want to hear our stories? No.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, go ahead and give me your story.
Yeah, go for it.
I apologize.
Okay.
You want me to go? Okay.
Yeah, you go first, Carolyn.
Okay. And this is actually Erin. I don't know how I got mixed up in with different rooms, but I would say my quick story would be that my daughter has Down syndrome and regressed significantly over the last 3.5 years. And we finally, we were hospitalized for many months and we finally found a treatment that works called ECT. She had 19 treatments and I walked in the middle of September and they had shut down all non-elective or elective procedures due to a nurse shortage, and so she has significantly started to regress again, and we've been on a waiting list, so we get one treatment but then we'll be put on the waiting list. So I am beyond frustrated about that situation because we were making so much progress. I hadn't heard her talk in 3.5 years and she was actually completing sentences and eating again and everything was great. And then we had the problem of the shutdown. So there's my quick story. So go ahead.
Okay, maybe I may have been disconnected before I got the instructions, but I thought the instructions were a favorite game, meal, and vacation stories. So that's what I'm going to go with. And if it's not correct, then you guys are going to hear those 3 things on me. As a child, my favorite game was Red Rover, send Andrea right over. That was my favorite game as a child. And honestly, it's still my favorite game. I have not changed. My favorite meal is tacos. As a child, still to this day, tacos. And vacation, I remember as a child going from Arizona and driving back to Carlsbad, New Mexico, where my parents were raised in Carlsbad, New Mexico, and parts of Texas, and going back every year and piling 6 kids in the back of the station wagon and trucking at 13 miles and knowing what points we were going to stop and eat our picnic in the basket mom made for fried chicken and bread. And again, that was the vacation of my life as a child. And I can honestly say that still is a lot parallel with the experiences I have with my vacations as an adult. It makes me just as happy to think about it. And that's my 3 items.
Okay, and I didn't have access to the chat since I was driving, and so I thought we were supposed to just tell a story and then have the person listen and not engage, but yours was much better. So thank you.
No.
I apologize.
No,
So,
Erin, yours was better. Yours was much better.
No,
I'm sorry.
I wanted
to
to
share.
Yes, thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you guys. I'm going on mute again. Thanks.
And then are they getting a 2-minute warning as well, Mark? No?
I just gave it 1 minute.
I just have to tell, since I'm in the main session, you guys have done an amazing job. This is so good, great information. So thank you for all your hard work.
Oh, thank you.
What's good about it, Erin?
I, have attended a lot of workshops that talk about engaged speaking, and just the way that it's straight and to the point. That's what I really like. I feel so many times we get, they tell all these stories and, but it's just like, I loved how she was like, your body language is this percentage and this is how to do engaged listening and take a breath. And I thought I love it when people are just straight to the point. So it's been very good.
Fantastic. Thank you
Thanks
for
for that feedback.
Yeah. And I apologize for not having to be on video. I hate not being on video, but like you said, I am driving, but I wanted to be able to attend.
No, you watch the road, not us. We're good.
Yes, absolutely. Your safety comes first.
Place that you laughed about. Well, the names have all changed since you hung around, but those dreams have remained and they've turned around. Who'd have thought they'd lead you? Who'd have thought they'd lead you? Here where we need you. Here where we need you. Yeah, we tease him a lot, 'cause we got him on the spot. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back.
Welcome back, Carter.
Yes. Yeah. That's it. Welcome back. Well, welcome back. Is everyone back? Because I can't see the entire screen. All right. Mark says we're good. Okay.
Welcome back to the place that you started from.
That's right. That's somebody knows the words.
Yeah, and people turn their cameras on. I love it. Hi, people.
Hello. Nice to see some faces, more faces. Yay. So who would like to share what that was like being listened to?
I would like to share.
Okay, please.
So I had shared out that a place I had always wanted to go to, which is Dubai. So I was telling Gabriel that I'm turning 50 March of 2022, and that has always been a place I wanted to go. So it felt good for him just to listen. And then once I finished with my spiel, he asked me why did I want to go to Dubai. And the reason why I wanted to go to Dubai because it's a beautiful place, and they have like the world's biggest buildings. The hotel we're going to be staying in is the world's biggest hotel. So I said, if I'm going to be turning 50, God willing, I wanted to do it big.
Hey, that's right. All right. And I heard you say that you were listened to. So what was that like to be listened to in the way you were?
It was good because he gave me his undivided attention. Sometimes people often want to just jump in. You could be having a conversation, you flowing and you trying to get your point across, and then they hashing their own opinions or values or whatever. So for somebody to just for those little bit of few minutes, I felt honored to hear me out.
Feel honored, right, to be listened to. Beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jacqueline, who was your coach? Who was listening to you?
It was Gabriel.
Gabriel, where's Gabriel? Like, kudos for Gabriel. I mean, awesome. Coach Gabriel, we're going to call you.
Anyone
Thank you.
else? Will anyone else like to share what it was like? How was it? I'm going to change the question. How was it to listen? To be an engaged listener?
Well, I'll share. First, as a man, it was very hard because we like to fix, but we don't like to listen. No, I really enjoyed it. You know, just being able to listen to Trudy, and it seemed as on the listener side, you was able to build a connection there in just a few minutes that you wouldn't have maybe got the opportunity to if you was interrupting and trying to drive your point home or make sure you covered the material on your sheet the way you're supposed to. So I really enjoyed it. Great meeting her and hearing about her family's first vacation to Disneyland with taking the grandkids and her husband. So it's really good.
Nice, nice. Thanks for sharing. So kudos for your coach, right? Okay. Mark, were you going to say something?
I was going to say, I think the thing that with what Randall had just said, it was, and I think it just speaks to the power of being present and listening. Is even just by listening, he mentioned that he was able to make a connection in a few minutes with someone they had never met. I think it's just really, really a great thing to restate.
Yep, absolutely. Okay. So now we're going to move into the skill of inquiry. So I'm going to pose to everyone, how might questions be more helpful than answers? How might questions be more helpful than answers?
I think questions can get them to start processing and thinking about whatever the topic might be in a different way than what they would normally think about it. Especially if you're dealing with a challenge, asking questions about how that challenge is affecting them and what changes that they would like to see gets them thinking about, oh, wait a minute, I might be able to do this and that might help with that challenge and change the outcome.
Right, get that person's thought process going, right, with the question. Thank you for that. And Randall wrote in the chat, gives you more insight into where a person is and might be dealing with or feeling. Yes, absolutely.
Sometimes I think it gives them more insight on what they really want rather than what we would prefer or we think is best or that kind of thing. By asking, the right questions, we can get them to understand a little bit more about how they feel or what they really want.
Exactly. Exactly. They come up with their own answers and solutions.
There's another good comment in the chat. Says, I cannot hope to help find a solution unless I've really heard the other person.
Right.
Yes.
So we are, as helpers, we want to find solutions for others. Just notice that. That is like a really normal, we want to help other people. And in coaching, I think that was sort of Randall's, that was your comment, right? And I'm picking up on what Augustine said as well. It's actually a paradigm shift. Because it is actually not us as the helpers that need to have the insight. The person who needs the insight is the person with the challenge, right? So the idea being is that We don't listen, so we come up with solutions. That's what I would call status quo. That's how really good consultants and really good helpers help other people. This is a completely, Val is teaching us a different way of thinking, that our questions are not for us. Who are they for?
We have a couple of more comments here in the chat. Andrea says, sometimes when we have them answer questions, it helps them brainstorm the situation and analyze. Yes, yes. Is this Michelle? M. Sanchez. Also helps them to get to their own solutions. And Randall says, it's that family-driven and youth-guided support. That's right, system of care. That's right. So what are the qualities of powerful questions? Well, they're real questions. They're not something we ask that's really advice in disguise. They come from sincere curiosity and respect. And they're not designed to lead to a particular outcome or an outcome we would like to see for them. You know, an example would be, oh, so don't you think that that blue Chevy that we saw is just so much better than that Volkswagen? Right, that we're trying to steer the outcome. They invite the person to reflect, invite reflection. And the questions will often begin with what and how. What and how. Rather than, next slide, please. Rather than closed yes and no questions, you know, which kind of cuts everything short, doesn't require the person to really process anything. And why questions? Now, why questions? The reason we say to reframe a why question is because why questions will often put us on the defensive. You know, well, why did you do that? You hear that, you know, it's like, oh, you know, I'm being judged. Someone's questioning. And so really, there are some other ways to ask why questions, such as, you know, what was your game plan when you took that particular step, right? Or, you know, what did you have in mind around that, whatever that action was? It lands on people differently than why. And as I said before, questions that you already know the answer to, or trying to steer that person to a certain conclusion. So my example with trying to steer the woman, you know, your friend, into, you know, selecting the car you like. Another one is, well, wouldn't it be better if? It's not really a question. You're stating your own, what you would like to see. And what's underlined at the bottom is so, so important to keep in mind throughout all this. Their good thinking is more important than your good question. Their good thinking is more important than your good question. Here are some examples of some great coach approach questions. What have you tried before? How did that work? What is the one thing that you could do that would have the biggest impact in the situation? As you hear yourself describe the situation, what is coming up for you? And that's, you know, gets to the heart of things for the person. What is the most important outcome in the situation? Like, that really gets to what really, really matters, what they want to see happen. More questions, great questions. What would success look like? What could go wrong? How will you deal with that? What is most important for you in this situation? Again, getting to the heart of the matter for the person. What changes might need to be made to help make this happen? How would you like this work relationship to look? Exploring that. And Mark, there is a sheet, right, with.
Yep. Yeah. So I put a sheet in chat, and then it's also on the WOVA app. It's called Coaching Questions. And it's pretty much these questions plus a lot more, all broken out by different areas, and we can show that towards the end. Before we take questions on inquiry or questions, I just wanted to take a step back to this slide here, and just this focus on these questions and ideas. They come from this idea of sincere curiosity and respect, and where the client is going with conversations. So it was interesting, and I had asked Janice in chat if it was okay if I kind of share this. She said yes. So Janice and I have had the opportunity to actually have a coaching relationship for almost, got to be coming up on a year now, I think, which is just amazing. And although I have heard some of that history of the family organizations that was happening in Washington State over time, I hadn't heard all of it until today. And although I'm really interested, and I have been interested in that history, in our conversations, Janice is driving everything. So if she wanted to go back to that and talk, absolutely, we will. And even though I may want to do it, it's not about me and where I am. It's when we talk, there's a challenge and we have questions, we have dialogue around it. And it just opens up the conversation. So I just want to kind of put that point that we're really in this idea of curiosity for them and not the story that we have or that we want. So I don't know, Jay, if you had any thoughts or reflections on that, or if the group has any questions or thoughts, or in inquiry in general.
Well, I think the coaching process has really taught me to try and question my own situations that I'm dealing with differently than I would have before. Like, I ask different questions of myself. But then when I come to a coaching session with Mark, and usually it's around either a decision point I'm trying to make that I'm having trouble with, or my own reaction to a situation that I'm in, right? So I have been put into an uncomfortable situation, and I'm trying to figure out, how do I react to that? Like, I don't want to just react. I want to think about, what do I want to put out there regards to that situation to change that dynamic? And what are the things inside me that are making me react that way? Is that a truth? Is that something that's really happening? Or is that a story I'm telling myself? And so by having Mark ask me questions that are directed at things that are under my own control and helping me observe myself, I'm able to come to different conclusions.
So Mark is coaching the person, right? Not the situation, not the history, not the context. We're going to actually show you a video next that kind of begins to put all these skill sets together. And you're going to be watching a coach, Monica, work with someone who lives in a very large service delivery system for individuals with developmental disabilities. This is one of the residents. His name is Kevin. He's been dealing with a problem for a really long time about how he connects with his family, and it hasn't gone anywhere. And so Monica is going to use the coach approach to help to support Kevin in his journey. We want you to watch Monica, and we want you to follow up on the skill sets that Val has taught us this afternoon. The skill set of presence, the skill set of engaged listening, certainly the skill set of inquiry. And we want you to pay special attention to what happens at the end of the conversation. How is it, from a coach approach, does Monica build in accountability for Kevin and support him in the commitments that he makes? So watch for that. And we'll come back, we'll have a conversation about it. And then we'll hear two really live stories from Benita and Adaminah about how they have used coaching with their young adult sons, I think, both their sons, children. And we'll see how this plays out in real time. So Val, thank you for really enlightening us about inquiry, and watch what Monica does so skillfully. Monica's on the right, Kevin is on the left.
Yeah, so back to what Ellen said is watch what Monica is doing, watch what she's not doing. Notice where they are and how they're sitting.
Want to get more interaction with family and friends.
Oh, so you've been thinking about that, huh?
Yeah, my family. Yeah.
So what have you done so far?
I called them and seen where I can go see them at, and when I can spend time with them. I'm thinking about the summertime.
Thinking about the summertime?
Yes.
Okay. And have you called, what, just one family member or
Yeah,
two family
I'm
members?
just call my sisters and my mom and my nephew. I've been talking to my nephew and my nieces now. My niece, I saw one of my nieces already though. She come up here for me.
Oh, so it's already worked for you.
Yeah, I saw one of them. I just didn't see my oldest niece. I didn't see my oldest niece
Okay.
yet.
How did you go about doing that?
I called my mom. My mom came up here and saw me, and my mom, my sister Nicole, and my foster dad come up here and see me. My little baby niece. Baby niece is like 3 months or 2 months. She's cute as a button now.
Oh, well,
She's pretty. She's real
congratulations,
pretty.
Uncle.
Yeah.
So what did you need to do, or what else do you need to do to get in touch with them?
I need to talk to them and try to schedule a date to see them. Yes. You guys tell me all the time, but I keep forgetting to do it.
Oh, okay. So what can you do to remember to do it?
I need to get a agenda, write down agenda, I think.
Oh, to write some things down.
Yeah, take agenda or make it like flashcards, something like that.
Okay, does that work for you?
Yes, flashcards work more because I get to see the pictures and it helps me mind my stuff because I can't read very good.
Wow, what a great idea.
Yeah.
So what are some other ways you could do that?
Other ways I can go about looking how to make flashcards on computers or digital flashcards or just mental flashcards.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. So you have a lot of ideas of how you could remember to get in touch with them.
Yes.
So what are some things that you could do to get them more interested in seeing you?
Show them pictures of me on Facebook.
Send some pictures, yes.
Send some pictures, tell them I miss them.
Mm-hmm.
Tell them I really love them. I miss you guys very much. Yeah, I
Great
do all
ideas.
the time.
Wow.
And probably showing them pictures of me getting more active in the community.
Oh, that would probably do it.
Yeah.
So how would you go about doing that?
By showing them how I'm working and how I'm trying to save money to get see them, and showing them how I grew in my lifetime. Yeah.
And how would you, you said you get flashcards,
Mhm.
you said you could do Facebook,
Yes.
you could go on the computer and send them messages.
Yes.
Well, you came up with a lot of options, so how can we get started on that?
I'd have staff help me, or I can try to do it myself a little bit.
Great idea.
Mhm.
Wow. Okay. So when do you want to get started?
Anytime.
Anytime.
Yeah, anytime I
Sounds
can.
good. So how can we get started?
By
Like today is today, tomorrow, when?
we can get started as soon as possible.
Okay.
Because I don't know what day to get started yet. Because I
Yeah.
have a lot of work to do. A lot. I
You got a busy schedule.
Yeah, I do have a busy schedule. So I'm thinking about on the weekend trying to go up there and see him one day.
Okay.
Okay.
So you mentioned that you wanted staff to support you. How would you go about letting them know?
I was just gonna ask the White if he don't mind taking me up there or don't mind trying to get some schedule for me to go up there. Because I say he don't mind.
Yeah.
He already told me that once. He said he don't mind driving up there, or having some way I can get up there.
Wow.
Or I can get my sister Nicole because she lives closer right now and try to get up there for all my family. That's what I'm really trying to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can let the staff know, and
Mhm.
what else? Let Mr. White know?
My Mr. White know and try to get and let my house manager know,
Mhm.
Mr. Urban.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
And then I have to talk to my sister Nicole, let her know because she lives closer to me.
Wow.
So that would be easier for me to get to my sister Nicole. And he's not here. Then later on, one day I get to see my grandma out there. My grandma lives too far away.
Okay. Is there anything else that we can do to help you?
Yes.
What would that be?
He'd help me by supporting me.
Okay.
Do what you always do, support me and keep me calm to the time I do get to see my family.
Keep you calm. So you're concerned about that?
A little bit.
A little bit. So what can we do to help you remain calm?
Let's be yourself.
Just be
Have yourself. Yeah.
Mhm.
When I see you guys happy, it makes me happy.
Great. I'll let them know that.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else you'd like me to do?
Yes. I like you to be yourself. Just be
All
your
right.
happy yourself. Yeah.
Try to do that very well.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Monica.
All right. So I'm going to ask just a couple of questions from the group and want to give a little context. So Monica is the CEO of a intellectual disabilities program in Maryland called Creative Options. And they have implemented the coach approach from staff and management all the way down to using it with clients. And Kevin is a client, a resident there. And I think just want to kind of get thoughts from the group. What did you notice about Monica? What was she doing in that conversation?
She was
Yes,
leaning in.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Augustine, then Randall.
She was leaning in when she was to show that she was listening and engaged.
Mm-hmm. So she was engaging him, listening. Yeah.
She was I don't want to say reacting, but for lack of better words, to his needs. She was she was drawing them out from him. When he'd make a statement, was that something you're concerned about? It was, because he made that blanket statement really, and then she said, well, is that something you're concerned about? Maybe losing control.
Yeah.
And he said, well, yeah, a little. So that's the thing, a lot of times we could get to that point and maybe skip over to something else rather than taking that moment, draw out a little bit more, because we all know that getting through a tense situation sometimes, it's just being able to voice, okay, I do have a concern with that. That might be an issue. It's that self-awareness. And I love the way she kind of helped draw that out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, was Kevin safe to put his thoughts out, to put his concern about losing control? Because the conversation was open. It was his plan to reach out to the family. It was his plan to use social media to engage. It was his plan to how he was going to calm. Trudy and then Bonnie? Or, oh, there goes Trudy.
Hi. Can you all hear me? It's Trudy. I think what was really good is that she validated his ideas, and which to me made the participant feel that, you know, he had great ideas and he was able to come up with things on his own. You know, she validated them and she kind of praised him, you know, for the great ideas he came up with on his own.
Yeah. Great. Bonnie, your thoughts? And then we're going to go to Philadelphia.
I think one of the biggest things that I saw was not only was she leaned in and completely in tune with what he was saying, but she took the time. You could see on one of the questions, she took the time to stop and think about how she was going to word the question, where the answer that she was trying to draw out of him was his answer and not what she was expecting the answer to be.
Yeah.
You could tell that she didn't expect any certain type of answer from him other than what he was feeling, what he was thinking, what his ideas were. The entire conversation was centered completely around him.
Yep, absolutely.
And
And driven by him.
Yes, exactly. And I think, you know, especially when dealing with a situation of that type, that really helps to not only engage the person, but it makes them feel like, okay, I've got a safe space to share what my thoughts and ideas are. So if I do have a concern, which it did come out in the conversation that he did have that concern about being able to remain calm, they're able to voice that without having to worry about the fear of, oh my gosh, are they going to judge me? Are they going to get mad? Are they going to tell me I'm wrong? You know, are they going to tell me I shouldn't feel that way? It was all about what his thought processes were, what his desires, his needs, and his desired outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. It was him. It was his conversation. All right. So with that, oh, wrong way.
Mark, can you also highlight what Monica did at the end of the conversation, which is a very unusual way of having a conversation?
Trying to think here. End of the conversation, closing the loop, accountability. So it was basically going back to, when are you going to do this? And he said, well, I can't do it right now. Busy weekend, so I'll start here. Who are you going to work with? Mr. White. And then what else am I forgetting? I think that was it. Right.
Yeah. So Kevin made his own commitment about what he chose to do. It wasn't what Monica wanted him to do. It wasn't her decision. And then she said, what can I do to support you? And she said, just be your happy old self. Because when you're happy, I'm happy. And so he was like, okay, that's what I'll do for you.
Yeah. And just while we're getting Philadelphia set up, the one thing I think is really important is this gaining commitment. As I touch the screen, gaining commitment. If the person you're coaching has not committed to an action, committed to doing it, you can't hold anybody accountable. You have to have commitment for accountability. So I think it's just a big point to stick on, and then turn it over.
Okay, I will gladly talk about this next portion, which is about Philadelphia and the development of the first coach approach model for families. Just to set the context before I turn it over to our other co-presenters, we had implemented the original coach approach, with a number of stakeholders in Philadelphia, and we had family members from our DBH IDS family member committee attend as well. On the heels of that, in thinking about what might work for families, these family members, gave feedback, provided input, talked about what worked really well, maybe what could be shifted, really gave such valuable input to creating one that would work better for family members. And that training happened shortly thereafter. And we trained a total of 22 family members in that particular training. And Benita Tillman and Adaminah Tankersly, who are here from Philadelphia Family Voices, were part of this journey. And so I'm so proud to and happy that they can be here today to talk about it from their own perspective, the coach approach, that training, and how it has impacted them from that point forward. So I'd like to turn it over now to, not sure who's going first. Benita? Yes, okay. All right. Benita.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
My name is Benita Tillman. I'm one of the feminine board of directors of Philadelphia Family Voices and also their secretary. I wear many hats, but my favorite hat is being a parent. Okay. In this day and age, we face with challenges. For me, it's a challenge to get up, sometimes to get dressed. The most challenging is being a parent. With challenges, we must be able to make sound decisions that determine positive outcomes. So once I learned about the coach approach, that helped me make some of these challenging decisions that I face every day as a parent easier. So if y'all don't believe me, I'm gonna prove it to y'all. I just need y'all to forgive me because I have many skills, but acting is not one of them. So I'm gonna act out a scene between me and my son that happened a month ago. But just forgive my acting skills because that's not a skill that I was blessed with. So here we go. It was a phone call, so I got my phone up. My phone ringing. Hey Alexa, stop. Google, stop. Hello? Hey Mom, what you doing? I'm doing my schoolwork. You always doing some kind of work. It ain't schoolwork, housework, regular work. Elijah, what do you want? Why you gotta say it like that? Because the only time you call me is when you want something. Now, what do you want? Well, you know that picture I sent you by accident? Yeah. Well, that picture, that was my girlfriend. Really? Yeah. And tomorrow's our 2-month anniversary. Wow. So how can I help you? Well, what happened was I want to buy her a gift, but I don't have no money. You don't have no money. So how can you get some money to buy her a gift for your 2-month anniversary? Well, I would have had money, but you know, this summer I worked 2 jobs. I didn't save no money. And then you told me at school you want me to focus on school and school year, and I couldn't get a job. So what I'm hearing you saying is that you got a girlfriend, it's your 2-month anniversary, you want to buy her a gift, and you don't have no money, correct? Yes, Mom. So what can you do to get money? Well, I could go to work with Grandpa, but that work is hard because he be moving people, and that would take all day. What other option do you have, Elijah? Well, the other option is coming to your house, because you said if I come over every weekend and help you around the house, you'll give me an allowance. And today is Friday, and it's considered a weekend, so if I come over, I can earn some money. So what I'm hearing you say is that you want to come over here to help me straighten up the house so you can earn some money to get a gift for your girlfriend. Yes. Okay. I need the trash taken out and I need you to help me get the dresser down. I was trying to get down. Oh, Mom, that's fine. I can do that, but you can't come tonight because it's late, so you need to come tomorrow. Well, it's Saturday tomorrow. I like to sleep in late. Well, if you sleep in late, how are you going to make the money to get the gifts? Yeah, Mom, you're right. But one more thing. And what's that, Elijah? What's that one more thing? You know the movie tickets you won? Yeah, you talking about the tickets I won in the trivia contest. Yeah, you got 2 of them in the gift card, right? I say, yeah. Well, you don't have no boyfriend. You don't have no anniversary. So I want to use them. So what I'm hearing you saying is that you want to come to my house. You want to help me with the trash. You want to help me with the show. And in return, I'm going to give you my movie tickets and an allowance. You have to earn the movie tickets. He said, okay, I'll clean the bathroom. I'll clean the bathroom, but I don't do toilets. Okay, so you want to come over here tomorrow morning. You want to clean my bathroom. You want to take out my trash and break down my shelf with some movie tickets and allowance. Is that correct? Yes. Okay, son. What time will you be here in the morning? Can you call me and wake me up? Sure. What time do you want me to wake you up? About 7 o'clock. Fine, I will wake you up at 7 o'clock. Now you have a good night and don't forget to pray. Well, I love you, Mom. You don't forget to pray. You know you're my favorite son. Now good night. Well, Mom, I'm your only son. But I'll see you tomorrow. Love you. Bye. So that was just an example of my son telling me he had a girlfriend last month, which kind of was weird, but it was okay. And telling me that he had an anniversary. And, you know, the thing about that was, and my favorite thing about Coach Approach is accountability. My son always blamed me for things. And growing up, I heard that when you have a child, when they do something, it's your fault, right? Well, in this situation, when you use the coach approach, it's never my fault. It's the person's fault because they are held accountable for the choices that they make. I'm not making the choice for you. You're making the choice, you know? So when I first took the coach approach, I actually think I was in the first original class. And then I turned around and took the one for families and they broke it down. And then I just recently took the one for young adults. And I took the one for young adults for a refresher. The coach approach been not only successful to me as a parent, but in my personal life and my professional life, but mostly as a parent. And my favorite part about it is the accountability, because I love it that I can't get blamed for the decision that someone else has made. Sometimes when people come to you, they ask you for your opinion. They already know the answer, but if you give your opinion and they take your advice, they get mad at you if it don't work out. But if you use the coach approach method, they making their own decision. It's their own choice. And if it don't work out, you can't get mad at you because that's the choice they made. That's where the accountability comes in. So I'm gonna finish with that. If anybody have any questions, I'm here to answer them. And if not, we can move on to Adaminah. Any questions?
Well, I'm just going to make an observation, Benita. You are like the most awesome reflector I have ever seen. So let me make sure I'm hearing you right. Ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. Yeah, is that right? Yeah, that's right. Conversation goes. Let me make sure I've got it right. I heard you say ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. Great job.
And your acting skills were on point.
Thank you. I was kind of nervous because I was trying to be like my son. I could be me, but I can't be him. And I did the best I could.
It was great.
Guess the only question I have is, did your son actually show up and help you with the chores?
Well, yes, he showed up, but he said, I'm not doing the toilet. He did my tub, he mopped my floor, he broke everything down, and he took the trash out. And before he left, he made sure, because I gave him the money, I didn't want to give him the tickets. Then he walked out the door, he walked back in and said, Mom, you forgot to give me the movie tickets and the gift card that goes with it. So I gave it to him. I didn't forget. I was just hoping he forgot. But yeah, he came and then he was excited. He left. And he took the tickets and the money because he wanted to get the girl a gift and spend some time with her because she lived in another part of the city. So yeah, he came. That was the only time he came though. Because the thing is, I told him to come every weekend so he can make money. And he only came one weekend so far.
Hello, Benita. This is Sheila, your mother. So yeah, I just want to know that since you took the coach approach training, do you find that it's I mean, I know you said with Elijah that it's been helpful, but do you find yourself using it even more now since you took it like in every aspect, whether you're working or you know, like with Elijah or and with other people as well?
Thank you. Great question, mother. Yes, I use it every chance I get. And if I don't use the whole coach approach, right, you can use the skills within the coach approach. Like she said, Ellen said, Benita, you use reflection skills. Great. That's one of the skills in coach approach. Making somebody be accountable. That's one of the skills of coach approach. Effective listening is one of the skills of coach approach. You know, so even if I don't use the whole thing, when I'm having conversations with somebody, I use a skill, 1 or 2 or maybe 3 skills I learned in coach approach, and it makes me better person and sharpen my skills, but also it makes the person feel valued because wow, somebody listened to me. They not interrupting. They really paying attention to what I'm saying. So yes, I use it every chance I get. It might not be the whole thing. Sometimes it might be parts. And yes, I use it on you. If you only recognize it, you know, you enter this training today, Mom, you will recognize it when I use it on you.
And hi, Sheila.
Hey, Val, Benita, you did a great job playing you and Elijah. I really thought Elijah was there.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Benita. That was awesome. I'm going to turn it over now to Adaminah Tankersly, President of the Board of Philadelphia Family Voices.
Hello. I just want to make an announcement. I'm having wonky broadband this morning, this afternoon. So I'm not able to be on camera, but I am with you all in spirit. Benita, hard to follow up after that. Coincidentally, Benita and I both have sons named Elijah. So this is my experience with my Elijah. Elijah is a young adult living with autism and other mental health and behavioral health diagnoses. So with that, I too took the coach approach training, and then Benita and I both were on the team to collaborate and help give input for the family member coach approach. We both eventually took the family member coach approach. So Benita and I have been walking alongside each other, supporting each other for some time now, with the awesome guidance of Valarie Oulds, who, we both appreciate her. She's amazing. But Benita and I make a good tag team. She calls me, I call her, we support each other. We're able to bounce different ideas off of one another. So with my son, he has aged out. But this story happened in the very beginning when we were working collaboratively with creating the family member side of the coach approach. And my son came home from school one day and he was limping. And I said, why are you limping, Elijah? And he was like, well, Mom, I'm angry. I said, okay, well, why are you angry? He said, because my foot ran over and now I can't walk and I don't want my one-to-one. So he was very, very frustrated. So I wasn't able to get all of the information from the story because, it's hard for him to give me a story from A to Z. So sometimes I'll get A, B, and C, and then later on I'll get G. Then I'll come back and I'm able to get, the next, but it's not in an order that you can really follow. So I've learned to pay attention and to listen and organize it in my mind so that I can understand how the story unfolds. The limping continued, so I ended up having to take him to the hospital. So we went to the hospital and he ended up having to get a walking boot because he had like a really severe sprain. So while we're in the hospital, I said, well, we had an incident at the end of the school day and I don't really know what happened. And he was like, oh, a wheelchair ran over me. So I'm thinking a simple lightweight wheelchair. He's like, no, Mom, the ones that have the motors. And I said, a motorized wheelchair ran over your foot? Now, in my mind, I go straight to my mode. I didn't get a phone call. I didn't get a slip sent to me. No adult has told me about what's going on with my son. Now, at this time, my son is, he's considered a senior. And he was, I think at this time he was 20, because this is the year before he aged out. He aged out at 21. But as I said, my son, he's autistic. He has intellectual disabilities disorder. So I'm not really going to get a full accurate story from him. And if he's at school, some adult should be telling me something. So right off the bat, I'm angry. I mean, my scarf is pulled. It's strings hanging everywhere. Okay. So why hasn't anyone called me about my son? Now I'm in the emergency room. He's getting a walking boot. I'm really frustrated, but I'm not trying to show him I'm frustrated because I don't want to trigger him because he can have a reaction. He can have that adult meltdown. I don't want to deal with that. So I'm waiting. And by this time, this is after school hours because he was about an hour and a half away from school. So school ends at about 3 o'clock. He doesn't get home until about 4:30. No one is in the school building. You don't have any contacts to talk to anyone. So now I have to wait till the next day to speak to someone at school. So I called the school in the morning. I asked what happened. No one knew what happened. So they said, okay, we'll call you later and let you know what happened. So later on, we had a conference call, and basically Elijah had walked into the library to say goodbye to a teacher. But as he's walking in the doorway, there was another student in a motorized wheelchair coming out. Now, Elijah can sometimes squeeze into somewhere and not give the other person the right of way. He doesn't always judge space well. So it was a true accident. Not something for anyone to get upset with, but it was an accident. However, I didn't like the follow-up of the accident. Now, Elijah also has a one-to-one. For those of you that don't know, that's one caregiver that stays with that student all day long. So the one-to-one did not call me to tell me he was injured. The one-to-one didn't tell any of the teachers. The one-to-one just walked him to his cab and sent him home, the private cab service. So I had the meeting with the teachers, and the teachers were like, oh, okay, we just wanted to let you know what happened, that was going on. We're going to update you. So they also said Elijah is upset and he doesn't want to work with his one-to-one. Could you talk to him and convince him to work with his one-to-one? And I said, well, I'll talk to Elijah when he gets home today, and I'll call back tomorrow and I'll let you know the outcome. So when Elijah came home, I said, you didn't want to work with your one-to-one today? He said, no, I don't want to work with him ever again. He's fired. So tell him he's fired. I said, you want me to tell the school that the one-to-one is fired? He said, yes, I want you to tell them he's fired. I said, okay, Elijah. Now he had a trip the very next day. And Elijah, with his meltdowns and the behaviors he has, he's not allowed on a trip if he doesn't have a one-to-one. So I said, okay, Elijah. I said, what's going to happen with the trip if the one-to-one is fired? He said, well, then maybe I don't need to go on that trip, but I don't trust him anymore and I don't want to work with him. I said, okay, so how should we handle this? He said, you should call the school and tell them he's fired. I said, well, I didn't make the decision for him to be fired. So what are our other options? He said, well, I could tell them, but they're not going to listen to me. I said, okay, what happens if they do listen to you though? I said, what would happen if we tried? So he said, well, I could tell them that. He said, but I'm just a kid. I said, well, Elijah, we have conversations often and you tell me, Mom, I'm an adult. And you say it with, such power that you're an adult. This is an adult moment right here. Mommy doesn't have to fix it. He's like, but you always fix it. I said, well, this is a great opportunity for you to show me you can fix it. He's like, I don't know. Maybe I should just stay home for the next 2 days. I'm like, I don't think you need to stay home. So who would you talk to about this? He said, well, I could tell my teacher and then I can tell the person in charge of the safety team, because the one-to-one comes from the safety team and he knows the safety team person's boss. So I said, well, what do you think you're going to do when you get to school tomorrow? Because you need to go to school. And he's like, I know, I need to go to school. So I can go to school and I don't have to see my one-to-one and I can tell them right when I get there, he's fired. I said, okay. So Elijah went to school. I wasn't sure if he was going to do it. The principal calls me and says, oh, Miss Tankersly, we were under the impression you were going to convince Elijah to keep the one-to-one. I said, well, I understand you were under that impression. I said, but aren't we teaching him to use his voice? And aren't we teaching him to be involved in his caretaking and involved in his life and planning? That's part of our life skills that we're teaching. They said, yes, but if he doesn't have a one-to-one, he can't go on the trip. I said, did you say that to Elijah? Now I already knew his response because I said it the night before. They said, yes, we told him that. And he said, he's fine with that. I said, well, then that's what he's going to have to live with. If he fires the one-to-one, then if there's no one-to-one, he won't go on the trip. Long story short, Elijah severed ties with the one-to-one. They were able to find another one-to-one and he was able to go on the trip. And he came home from the trip very, very proud of himself, extremely excited. And he was like, Mom, they listened to me. I was able to do what I wanted. I'm not mad at him, but I just don't trust him because, I'm hurt. Now I'm in a walking boot. The school was afraid of liability because he's in the walking boot. But I came from the aspect of it was an accident. I don't think anyone was negligent. I just feel as though the communication should have been better after the incident. And that's part of what we spoke to the school about. And that's what Elijah said. No one told my mom. I didn't like that. I had to come home and tell her that I was hurt. So I think that helped my son to be more empowered. And he does not tell me anymore, I'm an adult, I'm grown, I can make a decision. We sit down and have these conversations. So he does feel more empowered and he's not looking at me as mommy is going to fix it. Mommy is Mrs. Fix It. I have no voice. I don't say, unless I'm upset about something, then I yell I'm an adult. So he knows that he has the power to sit down and we can talk through something. And I think that really helps with him feeling encouraged, him taking, more ownership of things and being that a young adult that he is. And it makes me feel good because I don't always have to think. I get a break from having to think. It gives him an opportunity to use his brain and think through the issue. And I can kind of sit back and relax. And especially since he has the special needs he does, I have adult guardianship over him for many, many reasons. However, it does make me feel better that, okay, if this process is used with him, he can get from point A to point B. He can think through things and I can worry a lot less. And there are less things that I have to make the decision for. So that's just a really awesome part of utilizing the coach approach. And one question I have for you all is, what are some opportunities that you see that you can use the coach approach in work or your daily lives?
I think one for me, I also have a 15-year-old son who is on the spectrum and has multiple mental health and behavioral challenge diagnoses. And he likes to wear a lot of jewelry. He's one of those kids that grew up with all the hip hop artists, let's bring it out, and so he likes to wear, 4 or 5 necklaces and a gold watch and rings and things like that. And it got to the point where at one point on their school bus ride home, there was one student who constantly asked my son, "You need to tell your mom to buy me some of that stuff. I want your necklace." And my son was getting really frustrated. And he came home one day and, this is at like 14, 15 years old, in tears. And he's like, "Mom, I can't go to school tomorrow." And I'm like, "Okay, well, why not?" And he literally just lost it and explained, in bits and pieces about what was going on with that particular student. He's like, "I want to wear my jewelry, but I can't because I have to worry about this other kid asking me and hounding me and, not leaving me alone, not letting me have my own space." And the first thing I did was like, "Okay, son, I completely hear what you're saying about this kid won't leave you alone. This kid's not letting you, have your personal space. He's constantly hounding you about your jewelry and stuff. What can you do to put an end to it?" And he's like, "I don't know." Typical teenage answer. "I don't know." And I said, "Well, have you told this other student that you are not going to do that and that you want him to leave you alone?" He's like, "I've told him that so many times, Mom, he won't listen." Then it was like, "Okay, well, what's your next step?" And we started trying to, he was coming up with all these different ideas and things like that. And finally he said, "You know what, Mom? I think I'm going to talk to the bus driver about it tomorrow and just say, look, I can't anymore. Can you please move me and this other student apart so that there's not even an opportunity for conversation between them?" I was like, "You know what? That sounds like a really good idea, son." And I said, "So when are you going to do this?" He said, "I'm going to do it tomorrow morning." I was like, "Okay." So the next day, went to school. He comes home in the afternoon. He's got this big grin on his face. He's, kind of bouncing off the walls because he's feeling good. And I was like, "So how was your day?" And he was like, "It was great." And I said, "Okay, well, tell me about it." And the first thing he started doing was saying, "I talked to the bus driver and she didn't even know what was going on." And that was one of my son's frustrations from the day before, is because he couldn't understand why the bus driver and the bus monitor weren't saying anything to this other student. And so when he came home the next day after he talked to the bus driver, he was like, she didn't even know that this was going on. And when I got on the bus this afternoon, they put me in the back of the bus and they put this other kid right behind the bus driver so she could keep an eye on him. And he said, "That kid didn't say the first word to me on the way home." So, just being able to use that, coach approach to, work my son through so he could see how he's got that voice and he can, solve his own problems and things like that without having to run to mom and go, I need you to call the school bus driver. And that was his first approach when he came to me about it. It was like, you need to talk to the school bus driver and tell her I'm not riding that bus if that kid doesn't, get kicked off the bus and, and things like that. So, I mean, it was a good learning experience for him, but it was also a good chance for me to work on getting him to kind of fight his own battles, so to speak.
It's about empowerment, empowering,
absolutely,
and letting them make no decisions. So thank you for that so much. And I'm going to turn it over right now back to Mark as we head to toward the end of our session together.
All right. So I'm going to talk just a little bit on kind of how and kind of what we were doing in Pennsylvania to really look at this on a more kind of statewide approach. And I know Ellen can also chime in probably some experiences from some other areas as well. But how we really kind of started with this is we actually started out with Ellen coming in to, we brought in, we have about, I think at the time, 5 or 6 system of care grants in Pennsylvania. So, and plus a bunch of other SAMHSA grants. So what we ended up doing was bringing everybody, all of these grant directors, our state leadership and management team, which is our kind of our oversight board for the grant, youth and family organizations. We brought all of these groups together from across Pennsylvania and started off with this idea of adaptive leadership for system change. It's one of the courses that Ellen created at Georgetown, and it's the why of leadership, who we are in this world of leadership, and from there, we decided then to do, after the coach approach to adaptive leadership was really finalized back in 2017, we then took the coach approach. Similar groups coming together across networks, across grants to learn the same information, starting that idea of changing our conversations. So from that, we said, wow, this was really amazing. We just had so many people that had new insights, new understanding of where they were in the world, and a lot of it was painful at times too, because you started to realize the things that you were doing to other people, losing faith, not believing they could do things, and it was an eye-opening experience. So what we said is, we want to bring this across Pennsylvania. So we developed a contract with Ellen and in partnership with OMSAUCE. We brought on 8 trainers in Pennsylvania, family members, system partners, some state employees, and developed a training mechanism for the coach approach to adaptive leadership, a train the trainer. And from that time, we've really kind of ramped this up with the goal of changing conversations to change how we see this world, to improve how we see this world, and to make this a more full system of care. So we've been training our counties across Pennsylvania. We were doing this all in person. I'll go into that in a little bit. And then we actually switched over to a virtual model. The other thing that we really learned in this idea of the train the trainer model and having people go through the course, we wanted to see how it really was going to be working towards the long run. And what we really needed to do is these learning circles and webinars. So we would have refresher webinars or new information webinars and record them and post them for people that have done the coach approach. And I think one of the greatest things that we do is these ideas, what we call them learning circles. It's voluntary. If you completed the coach approach, you can come to the learning circle and learn something new, maybe. Get chances to go into your table groups or new table groups, meeting new people. They're all set up random. So people just join together, and then actually do some real coaching work and do some dyads of addressing some real challenges and issues that they're facing. Do about every other month for about an hour and a half, and it's just a great experience. And plus, we get to hear And it's also it's a release for a lot of people of just being able to feel comfortable and safe to talk. Then we're looking at really this idea of changing our language, our systemic or system language. And I'll talk a little bit more about the virtual as well as the longitudinal evaluation. Ellen, do you want to talk real briefly or a couple of sentences about kind of what's happening globally and how this looks in other areas? We were very fortunate to have system of care and the state support to bring Ellen and the team in and actually then support the trainers as well. So.
Yeah, so this little conversation that I had with Beth Greenland in Stark County, Ohio, 6 years ago is really beginning to come to fruition. Not only is Mark taking such a leadership role in Pennsylvania, but we are working with the child welfare systems, teaching the entire supervisory structure of child welfare in South Carolina and the state of Maryland. We're working with systems of care in the state of Texas, Michigan, and Washington State, continuing our work there, and developing a leadership fellows program where the coach approach is sort of an anchor skill set for people wanting to lead change, particularly in the framework of the system of care. And that's taking place in Georgia and soon to be launched in Washington shortly. We have had many conversations across the country, but most gratified by seeing the opportunities for providers, systems partners, young adults with lived experience, and families coming together and learning these skills together so that we are really learning how to talk to each other cross-culturally in order to create change that it's sustainable and durable. So Mark's story about capturing the imagination and really having the vision, Mark, if I could just say, you know, it's one thing to take this. It's another thing to actually implement your vision. And Benita and Adaminah took something and said, I'm actually going to change. Mark took this and said, you know what, I'm going to change and lead in my state. And Janice did the exact same thing. What we're doing is not sustainable, right? What we're doing is continuing to sort of be in that space where we're not sure. We move 2 inches, we move 5 and 10 inches back. And so we're hoping to see, you know, a constant regeneration so that we can change the conversation, as Mark so aptly says, along the way. So maybe we'll be in your state. I don't know. Is there anybody from, I know Anita, I saw you in Georgia. She's a fellow. Augustine, we were with at Maryland Coalition for Families several months ago. As Mark said, we're working with transition age youth and young adults in Pennsylvania, working with the Youth Move chapter there, just like we worked with the family chapter in Philadelphia to really carve curricula that would be targeted to specific affinity groups as well. So I don't know, is there any question, are there anybody from those states that I mentioned? Michigan, Texas, Georgia, South Carolina, Maryland, Pennsylvania, Washington. Nobody on the call. Okay.
Yeah.
And we've done some work in Oklahoma too, very, very early on. Jerry, you may remember that as well.
I would just answer your question. I'm in Pennsylvania.
Yes, you are.
I'm just so proud that, to see how far y'all came, you know, with this coach approach. I mean, I could never imagine. So I'm proud of every day. It's one of y'all.
Oh, and Benita is one of my regulars for my learning circles, so she's always a pleasure to see. So
Bonnie, do you have a question? Bonnie, was that a? Oh, okay.
So the coach approach works. And we're going to show, and we have a lot more data, we can actually really show that this works. So outcomes outcomes are achieved more quickly, or reach more quickly. And I will say that's an overtime piece. people got to get used to coaching. They got to get used to that idea of going through a process. And as they get used to it and more used to it, there's a flow to it. And it does happen so quickly. And everyone comes in more prepared. Staff develop these critical thinking skills. They absolutely do. And staff feel supported as well. The knowledge and skills of staff are tapped. Morale is boosted. Managers do have less stress because they can rely on people. And this really is tied into the system of care philosophy. And when you said about bringing like parents and systems together, I was doing a training like 2 or 3 months ago, and somehow, not somehow, it was more random, a parent got connected or got in a dyad about how they came to be where they are in their work, that question, with the administrator of the whole entire school district. And it was such a great outcome from the conversation we got, because we got to debrief it. People that would never be in the same room together, never have a conversation, learned that they had so many similarities. So it's just neat in that idea of system of care, bringing others together. Just there's a lot of information here, and I just kind of go over a couple things. The coach approach is really good with shifting priorities, identifying areas where there's growth and where there's performance needs. And really, it does change relationships. It truly does. And it does affect how we look at our patterns and starts to look at, we call it noticing. You start to notice, even if you do something wrong, you stack 3 questions together, you ask a why question or whatever, you just start to notice these things a lot quicker. Ultimately, the coach approach aligns with system of care to strengthen services and supports. We love having providers doing this because we think that it's skills that they can use. And we've heard from clinicians, I thought this was going to be more like therapy, and it's not. And I can use it. So we have really good relationships with providers because of this. We bring systems together for cross-system communication and collaboration. It supports health and human services. We really focus on critical thinking skills in youth, in family, and systems. We bring the people together because we believe they all have equal voice. And it supports our retention. It supports staff feeling safe, seen, and heard. How do we sustain this? Practice, practice, practice. Modeling the behavior on a daily basis, embedding it in that day-to-day practice. We meet. We think about those opportunities that was a coachable moment. Can I go back to it? And we share those great coachable moments. I had a conversation with Ellen the other day that I was ecstatic from talking to somebody that had a great coaching experience. And we make emphasis on meetings. We bring this into meetings. We ask more questions. We take on less responsibility. And we encourage these skills from a top down, bottom up, across, vertical. I don't care how you look at it. You can coach up, you can coach down. It's everywhere. And we're looking at a lot of different opportunities, e-learning, and really kind of how we got even to here. I mean, we were supposed to be meeting in Chicago, and was upset when I hadn't been out there in a couple of years and really ready to go. And this COVID. And as we were getting ramped up, we had just, I think, qualified or certified all of our instructors in face-to-face, and COVID hit. And Ellen's like, so I guess we'll see each other in a year or 2 or 6 months and we'll start this up again. And I said, no, we have to do this virtually. And there was a lot of doubt, a lot of ladder jumping, inference jumping. We can't connect virtually. We can't do this. So I said, let's try it. I got we got state employees, wasn't it?
Yes.
I got state employees to come together to do the training virtually as one of our test groups. And there was a couple system of care people that had done it in the past just to give us feedback. And they loved it. they loved it. We modified things. We went from a 2-day training that was Monday, Tuesday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, to a 5-session training. We went from 14 hours to 16 hours. So it's like a 2-hour and then 3.5 hours. We also do it in a 2-day still, kind of. It's, I like it spread out though. We are able to engage and get people to attend to these trainings now because it's virtual that would never be in it. Never ever. I mean, we had somebody from Michigan that joined us just to, because Ellen wasn't able to get out there. So I had a spot and said, yeah, come on in. We also, it helps family members connect. It helps systems and families connect to meet new people and really building our engagement and interaction. And we're actually seeing from evaluation, which I'll talk about in a second, we're seeing that individuals are having connections that are the same, if not better, of feeling engaged and being connected to the other people in the training. We're seeing it, I would say, probably a little bit higher right now in virtual than we are in face-to-face. Cameras are really, really important for that. So we partnered with the Youth and Family Training Institute, who does our evaluations for our System of Care grant, to actually develop a dashboard. We have a live dashboard that as data is entered in, it's updated, and we can really do a lot in the dashboard. We can sort by family, by youth, by gender, by age group, race, ethnicity. We collect a lot of information because we're trying to pull this together to ultimately show it to SAMHSA. Great dashboard, great team. They helped us create this longitudinal evaluation. We do a pre and a post, so a before and after. The pre and post, we actually have the same questions to see change. And in the post, we also do an evaluation of the trainers and the meeting facility, Zoom, that kind of thing. And then we actually do a 30-day and 120-day follow-up to look at this data over time. We've committed to doing high-quality training no matter where we are. Our evaluations are intended to reach all audiences. We're looking at a balance to figure out kind of what's the best approach in all of this. And we also use confidentiality for the trainees. That was a big thing, confidentiality with the evaluation when we started this, because people were worried that if they were going to use, someone's going to use the evaluation for a performance review or a performance evaluation. So we actually created a whole entire numbering system that is randomized for when people join the evaluation. So no one can really tell what's going on. Or who it is, I should say. So here are some of the numbers. These numbers actually probably have increased a little bit. We have about 581 people that we've trained so far in Pennsylvania. And we're continuing to increase this number. We'll probably get another 200 or 300 this year, at least in Pennsylvania, if not more. And then we actually have 426 in our evaluation. So we started our evaluation in, I think it was right about the end of 2018, 2019, something like that. So what we look at is a couple of key things. We look at how did the training reach its outcomes and goals? Was the training useful to our role? Feeling safe and supported, opportunities for interaction, opportunities to ask questions, opportunity to interact with peers. We also look at the actual skills over time. We have a lot of data that I didn't put into the slide deck because it's way too much. What we see is most of our people are coming in from systems and providers. That's a reality. Knowing that, we're also trying to really ramp up youth and family piece because we know that's an area that we're low in, and it's something that we acknowledge. The interesting thing, and it's not a slide in here, I was doing a press conference for Minority Mental Health Awareness Month a couple of months ago. And so I looked at the people that have taken the coach approach and I compared it against Pennsylvania demographically. And it was really close. It was really interesting that that kind of popped in like that. Don't know if that's a valid thing or not, but it was there. This is I think for us, the really important thing. The training was useful to the role. So you see the family, we had about 34. what you're seeing is actually about 94% of the people felt the training was useful to the role, agreed or strongly disagreed. We also, the numbers were very similar for everybody trained. So that includes system partners and everything else. You'll see some numbers for strongly disagree. And I'm going to point that out because it's something that we learned with doing Coach Approach and virtual and in person. The Coach Approach is not a behavior modification program for people to be assigned to because they're not great employees. If you're forced to be there and you don't want to be there, it's not going to work. And we've really set that groundwork very, very strong now that if you don't want to be there, you don't have to. We really move away from this. So just real interesting. The training was amazing and helpful and recognized faults and strengths and more confident as a family leader to communicate more effectively. This is actually a comment from one of our trainings and was just really nice. I think we have a couple time for questions and then
Yeah. So does anybody have any questions around what Mark just shared about the Pennsylvania journey? You know, pretty soon we're going to see oranges in all those counties. Yeah,
I have
Beth.
a question. I'm Beth Ayers. So in your one chart, the one graph, what's the difference between a provider and the system? Like who is a provider and who is system?
that is a great observation. Thank you.
Beth, where are you from?
Montana.
Montana. See, I'm in my Pennsylvania system of care world and thinking everybody else is the same.
Well, and I'm not new to the experience of being a family member or helping families. I am new to the world of Montana State and ad councils and advisory councils and acronyms and all of that. So I apologize.
No, you're good. So when we think in Pennsylvania, when we look at system, at least for this evaluation, we're talking if you're kind of a government employee in child welfare, mental health, juvenile justice, intellectual disabilities, autism, education, yeah,
public health, maybe.
Yeah. So that would fall under that system world. And then providers would be your behavioral health providers. Could be a community supports provider, big brothers, big sisters, even kind of thing. So I kind of system, government money, provider, pseudo government. Other questions or comments? Who wants us to come out?
Yeah.
Beth?
Chat box about I think 10 is Tennessee. Will y'all be coming to Tennessee?
Yeah, we'll be happy to really speak about the power of changing the conversation. You know, in teaching leadership for 20 plus years through the Georgetown Leadership Academy, one of the things I learned, Beth and others, is that when you bring system people, family leaders, young adults with lived experiences together, it becomes an opportunity to learn how to listen to each other in very deep ways. And what we're talking about in systems of care is innovation. It is creating things that don't exist today, like wraparound. You know, when I started in the 80s, wraparound did not exist. Yeah, and now it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. The idea that family peer support would be seen as a legitimate service alongside with clinical services was not even thought about. So I sit here today and I think about what's next. Like, what's next that we haven't thought about? You know, how are we going to put the healthcare system and the mental health healthcare system together? Or how are we going to leverage telehealth and gaming and video as a new avenue to build relationships with young people. We need leaders like you in this room to engage in difficult conversations to address that and other things on the very big systems level. And then it all kind of boils down to like the triggers that we get when we hear things that don't align with our own perspectives. And you're like, you lose your ability to be effective when that happens, all of us. And so the coach approach allows us to be the leaders we want to be and kind of manages our humanness so that we can step up to leadership. And seeing that happen in Pennsylvania, seeing that happen in Georgia, seeing that happen in Washington State and in Philadelphia, you know, the proof is in the pudding. And when the leaders come back and say, I am now more capable and more confident in what I'm doing because I am now practicing the coach approach, that's good enough for me. So I'm going to turn it over to Adaminah for last words in our session, and share with you some things to think about as you walk away. Adaminah.
Hello. We absolutely want to thank everyone for taking the time for coming. And just a few things to remember is how can you recognize a coachable moment? Are you tuned in to be able to see those moments when they arise and then move in that direction? Because when you're using the coach approach, you're really taking a step back. That's how I saw myself. I saw myself as, you know, I had to let go of the reins and step back and provide that opportunity for my son to feel that empowerment. So in the conversations that you have with family, with coworkers, with even friends, you know, just different areas of engagement, because this way of conversating is applicable everywhere. So just be mindful, you know, how can I recognize a coachable moment? What opportunities do you see to use the coach approach? And as that happens, and as this approach and this way of conversating and interacting is flooded into the system, so many feel-good moments are going to occur. Stress levels will come down, bonds will become greater, there will be empowerment everywhere, you know, and just because you're not coming up with the answer doesn't make that conversation not a win. You do not have the answer. You do not need to have the answer for that interaction to have a win. Sometimes the win comes from the other person that's being coached. And for me, that feeling is great. Every time I see my son come to a conclusion and I did not have to think about it, I'm like, yes, amen. That was just amazing. And it's just when can you use it? Do I see it? Am I open to see those moments? So we just want to thank you for your time. Thank you for participating. We appreciate you all. I appreciate my team. Thank you for letting me be on the team. I appreciate it. And I just look forward to this just sliding into every state everywhere. And coach approach just being like, this is just something we do.
Yeah, just something that we do, from your mouth to God's ears, and we're going to make that happen. You know, Maya Angelou said it best. You know, I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but they will never forget how they made you feel. And when we remember that, we build trust in relationships, anything is possible. So with that, I'd like to leave you also. Thank you all for being with us. Thank you to the team as well, and Adaminah for closing out so beautifully. And we'll see you for the rest of the conference.